What's going on, everybody? Welcome back here. We got some, for once, I'm really happy to be kind of s- a little bit more excited to talk about Rings of Power in some capacity. Now, granted, I'll call this way up front because I've thought about this for a while. There could be a point when we get into the Rings of Power after show section of this stream that we would easily be able to clip it off and call it it'll be its own clip and just cut out its own segment, rather. Just everything wrong with Rings of Power. I've been wanting to make a video about that, and I've got all this stuff brewing. Not that it's like a bad, like, in all fronts. I enjoy watching the show, but I also really don't in a lot of different ways. Both as just from a show standpoint and also from a person who has knowledge of the source material standpoint, but two separate things. But I'll get into that later. So nevertheless, because we do have another thing that we're going to talk about probably off the top. There's not a whole lot to talk about with it, but it is interesting. 17 years in the making, a sequel to Constantine is actually like Keanu Reeves' Constantine is in development again, because I feel like that's actually happened numerous times at this point. So, but we'll talk about that a little bit because I guess it's more or less now actually official in a lot of capacities. So that's pretty cool. And then sadly, I think too, um, we might have to call it a day on these She-Hulk after shows if everything ends up being like it was today. But nevertheless, I got John here with me before I start this going on some more rants and tangents. John, how you been doing today?
To be fair, I'm trying to fight off like a sinus infection right now. So if I duck off camera, it's just so you guys don't have to experience me trying to blow my nose 100 times. So, but
That's
yeah,
what the
other than
people
that,
came here for.
that's what I'm sure. I'm sure everybody was just chomping at the bit to get that. No, other than that, things are good. It's Batman Day, so I had to rock the Batman hat and the Batman shirt there.
I know, wasn't
Um,
it free comic day too for Batman? Weren't they giving away a free Batman comic at comic book stores, or at least some of
they
them were?
They probably did. Yeah, there's probably free Batman comics. I know that they also, and I had to work today, which really kind of frustrating because they actually re-released Mask of the Phantasm, 89 Batman, and Batman Returns. All were back in the theater today for a
I didn't know that.
for some limited showings. Yeah. So I wish I could have gone, spent the day there. Even if I had been off work, I got stuff around the house I got to do and stuff. There's no way I could have spent the whole day at the theater as much
There's
as I would
always
have
something
wanted
to
to.
do.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
That's what's always
So
crazy
anyway,
when the MCU does those big, like, come watch these 3 movies, the lead it's like, I don't know, I'd love to do that, but that's so much time, but yeah.
yeah, I don't know that we have much Batman news to cover today, but I still had to break out the hat and shirt for it.
Dude, there's never a wrong thing to bring up Batman.
That's true.
Like,
Very
I
true.
mean, that's like even from a Warner Brothers movie standpoint, that's their saving grace half the time in all reality. Even when a Batman movie is bad, it still does good for Warner Brothers.
Well,
Alright.
yeah, ironically, the worst Batman movies were also kind of the best comic book movies at the time because they were the only comic book movies at the
Right.
time. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they
Batman
had
Forever
yeah, and Batman
and,
and Robin.
Batman and Robin, like, that was it. Like, you took
Yeah.
what you like, I know Batman and Robin was bad, but at the time, I went and watched it. I watched it a couple times because it was all the Batman I could get.
Dude, I watched that movie a lot. Like, cause I mean, that was like I was a younger fellow at the time, like, that was just wee Rob, and,
True.
like,
That's
it
true.
was that was great. Like, because it was pretty much for me at that age, that was literally a live action cartoon, like,
Yeah,
to the fullest, and, like, so
sure.
I always thought it was really fun as a kid. Couple years later, you look back on it, and it's a joke. I mean, the whole thing's a joke. But if you
It
look
is.
at it with the veil of it being like a joke or a parody of Batman, like Batman satire, it still works. Like if you go and watch it, like if you look at it and you approach it from like the mindset of you're watching like the Harley Quinn show on HBO, like that animated series, but
Yep.
like a PG version of that, it really
Yep.
works. Like it
Sure.
really does.
And I
But
will say this, like, people people trash that movie, and rightly so in a lot of respect. I will say this though, of all those, I don't know what to call them, 89 series Batman movies that came out, everything from Michael Keaton, George Clooney, and Val Kilmer flicks. I think that particular film had the best representation of the Alfred Bruce dynamic. That's the one. I mean, the whole premise of that movie is that Alfred has this incurable disease that only Victor Fries can help with, and but Bruce and Alfred, George Clooney and Alfred, I always butcher his last name. Was it Ghoul? Goo? I think it might have been Ghoul that played
Sounds right.
Alfred. The two of them just did a phenomenal job showing how much Bruce cared for this guy that had basically raised him, and how much he cared for Bruce, and what Bruce would actually go through if he ever was faced with losing Alfred. Like they killed off Alfred in the comics a few years back, and I don't think that I don't think that they handled Bruce's loss of Alfred with nearly the heart and emotion that they gave it in that movie. Now, it was one small part of that movie, and the rest was very hard. You got to really dig to get to it, but but yeah,
Mhm.
I've always appreciated that part of that movie.
There were more ice puns than I ever thought I needed to hear in that movie.
Existed.
Yeah, like, "What
Yeah,
killed the dinosaurs?"
yeah,
The
it's
Ice Age.
I
It's
can't even do his voice.
it oh, neither can I, but it opens up with, like, dude, that's the first thing we hear from him, like, in
Yeah,
that movie. So, like, right away, you should know where you're going, and then it only picks up from there when
they
Batman and
pop
Robin kick out the
ice skates.
ice skates. Oh, man, that shit's funny, man.
They
Like,
kicked the
it's
doors
good.
off they kicked the doors off the shuttle, and somehow the doors
Yeah, they're
turn
like
into, like,
snowboards.
snowboards on air, though?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
oh,
it's all sorts of ridiculous, but it's great to watch. That's what I'm saying. If you look at it like it's a cartoon,
yeah,
it works. It really does work. Even
yeah.
like Poison Ivy's dialogue is ridiculous half the time. Like, and it works as a cartoon. So it's like a
I
really expensive cartoon in live action with George Clooney of all people.
I still remember the thing that made me more mad than anything else. Like, I could get past the puns, I could get past a lot of stuff in that movie, but just the way they did Bane, like,
Mhm.
with him just this dumb Hulk. I mean, Bane, that was very shortly on the heels of, um, Bane having broken Batman's back in the comic books, and that was such a huge story, and it was all built upon this fact that there's this guy out there who's kind of just like Batman, kind of just as smart as Batman. He comes up with this elaborate plan to break all the criminals out of Arkham and basically batter and beat Batman down until he faces him one on one and has nothing left. And it was such a cool character, and they just reduced him to this kind of just hulking. He wasn't
Food.
even a person. Yeah, he didn't even talk. Like, he couldn't talk properly. It was just it was terrible.
It was not a good representation of Bane in any capacity. They could have honestly, it would have been better. I don't mean to just dissect Batman and Robin forever, but that Bane interpretation could have worked if they made it be like a Bane henchman who was just
Sure.
on Venom, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then you had like a real Bane that was there but not participating. And like, if you had a bunch of henchmen that were like that, it would have been really
Yeah.
cool. Like, that would have worked. But yeah, being what it was, especially, like, coming off of, like, Nightfall, if that's what
Yep.
you're talking about
Yep.
Nightfall, like,
Definitely.
I'm sure a lot of people weren't a lot of Nightfall fans would have been really, because I was too young at the time, I wasn't reading the comics at that point, so it didn't affect me, I just looked at it like it was a cartoon. Like, to this
Yeah.
day, it's still really what it kinda feels like to me. I will say, though, to circle back to your George Clooney bit about, and Alfred, George Clooney was a really good Bruce Wayne. He
Yes.
was terrible
Excellent.
Batman, yeah, but he was a great Bruce Wayne, and then subsequently, Val Kilmer was not a very good Bruce Wayne, but he was a pretty good
So did
Batman.
Batman.
Yeah,
Yep.
like, if you coulda just, like, kinda swapped them out and made, like, a weird edit with just both of them doing each role, it could have been a little bit better, like, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. This I'm surprised that a fan out there hasn't done that. Do a super cut of all the good parts of Batman Forever, all the good parts of Batman and Robin,
Mhm.
see if you can make one decent halfway decent movie out of it.
That'd be a really tall order, but, yeah. It might work in some way, but I mean, honestly, when you look at like what we got in both scenarios, it's like, well, how much worse could it be? I'm sure someone could do it.
Yeah.
Like, nevertheless, though, Batman Day aside, we got another Warner Brothers property here who's
Oh, yeah.
ironically, his name has been tossed around quite a bit in the like, at least over the years, not anytime recently by any means, but Keanu Reeves has come up, in the Batman verse in a lot of different capacities, whether or not his name's been thrown around as obviously to play Constantine again at some point in time. But I mean,
Well,
people have,
and just as a quick side, he did play Batman, at least the voice of Batman,
he
in the
did,
DC Super Pets movie. So,
he
and he
did.
also mentioned that he would play a live action version and bring it on, dude. Let's get an Elseworlds film going somewhere with him as Batman.
I
But
it'd be a really I really just don't feel like I see him as a Batman character. I know people have, like, brought that up in the past, but I just don't know because I don't know if I could see him being Batman. I don't
uh,
think he could, like, not do it by any means. It's just in my mind, when I picture Batman, I don't know if I see Keanu Reeves as Batman. I could totally see him as, like, an older Nightwing. Like, I think that would work because
yeah,
I could see him being, like, an older Dick Grayson who has to deal with, like, Bruce dying. I think Keanu could and then subsequently taking on the mantle of Batman. I could see that. I don't really see him as a Bruce Wayne, I think is what it really comes down to. I've never gotten him in a role that was very Bruce Wayne-like, you know?
I'll say, I'll say this. I was trying to think of the comic I was trying to think of. I think he could do if they did like a like truly adapted like an Elseworlds tale like Gotham by Gaslight. I think he could be a very
Yeah,
interesting choice as that version of Batman. Um,
noir, yeah.
yeah, definitely that. But I also think that with Robert Pattinson's take on Batman, I think that kind of I think for a long time, the kind of go-to de facto Bruce Wayne was the billionaire playboy, and that's kind of the interpretation of Bruce that most people expect to see. And I think Pattinson
Mhm.
maybe has opened the door at least for some other versions of Bruce to possibly play out on screen. And yeah, I agree that he might not pull off the billionaire playboy, but maybe he could. I mean, it's Keanu. Keanu can do anything, can he?
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. That's the beautiful thing that I think a lot of people forget. A cat almost just yanked my headphones off my head, Jesus. Whew. A lot of people forget, though, that these people are actors. They act,
Yeah,
so it's like whether or not like, because I even said it myself, like, I just haven't seen him in anything that, like, just screams Bruce Wayne or screams
true.
Batman, but that doesn't mean he can't do it. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff. I mean, everything from Interview with the Vampire to Speed to The Matrix to John Wick, so it's not like he's got a very unique skill set in a lot of ways. But he's just never really had I mean, he's even done like, The Lake House. He's done tons of stuff, like, he's all over the place, so could he do it? Sure. Would if I was in charge of making a Batman movie, probably wouldn't be my pick, but I would love to have him do anything. It's like a lot of people always said that he should play, like, Revan in a Star Wars Old Republic movie. I don't see him as Revan at all, but I don't know, like, but does it say he couldn't do it? Hell no. And if someone said Keanu Reeves is gonna play Batman and, like you said, Gotham by Gaslight, I'd be all for it. I love Keanu Reeves. Like, Matrix is still one of, if not, like, my all-time favorite science fiction movie. So, man, I
I mean,
love me some Keanu.
this is the same dude who played Ted in Bill and Ted's and then went on to play, John Wick. John Wick, everybody, is
Yeah,
Ted from Bill and Ted's. Same
exactly.
same person,
Oh,
completely different.
and Constantine.
And Constantine, yeah, to get us back on track here.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, with this movie, here's how I always felt about this movie. It's a terrible adaptation of Constantine, but it is a
Movie.
fantastic movie. Like, it
Yes.
is a great movie. It has elements of the Constantine n graphic not I mean, his name's John Constantine. Realistically, it kinda stops there in a lot of ways. Like, there's really not a whole lot much else to it that really resembles it all that much other than his relationship with Hell is, like, it's similar enough, right? I mean, there's characters he interacts with. It's just the overall kind of like feel and I don't know, like aura of the comics really was just not used. It was more or less they made this really great just like science fiction film more than anything. Like, and it's really good. Like, it's like a science fiction horror kind of movie, and it's really, really good. So I always wanted them to make another one, even though it's not what I think of when I think of John Constantine as far as his connection to like the DC world and everything by all means, or the Sandman stuff. Like, not what I think of. But
Yeah.
it's still a really strong and good movie. Because especially when you think about like I mean, honestly, if anything shows you, like, and is kinda evident to how, like, good this movie is, even though it doesn't relate to the comics all that much, and it's just, like, its own standalone thing, is just, like, look no further than the Sandman series on Netflix and what they did with the Constantine character, because the Constantine character there is even further away from what this Constantine was on paper, right? Because it's like a woman playing it now. So that already makes it kind of like very different. And this Constantine in the Netflix series didn't really seem to be doing all the mysticism stuff yet. She seemed to be much more boots on the ground exorcism kind of Constantine. I didn't really see her like she didn't really know who Sandman was. So like she obviously has not gotten into the same kind of escapades that even Keanu's Constantine has yet. But it goes to show you that actress and that interpretation of Constantine still very much felt like Constantine, even though it was a different interpretation of Constantine. And in Sandman, it made sense that they did that because they did not have any of the rights to use anything that has ever been in DC. It only had to be Neil Gaiman stuff. So it could they had to easiest way to do that would have just been the gender bend at that point. So, and it still worked, honestly. Would I have rather seen like Matt Ryan or that kind of Matt Ryan has been like the closest interpretation to the comic book Constantine that we've gotten on screen, really. And like
Definitely.
I thought he did a good job. They didn't really give him a lot to do and like his own show. That was very mismanaged. And then they brought him in Legends of Tomorrow, and he got to do a little bit more stuff, but not any real Constantine stuff. So I don't know. I love the Constantine character though, so I hope whether or not it's. I would like to see, and I want to ask you this: if they make this sequel, because this is supposedly actually moving forward now, Akiva Goldsman is going to be writing the script to this. It's moving on. J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot is gonna be developing the film in some capacity, which is funny because when Zaslav came in and took over Warner Brothers, it seemed like JJ was gonna get the axe because Zaslabs, but he's gone on record apparently. This insiders have said that he was very unhappy with the Warner Brothers and JJ Abrams deal because if you remember, and any of you guys remember, they Warner Brothers signed JJ and Bad Robot to a $500 million first look deal. And that was like 4, maybe 5 years ago at this point. It's been a hot minute. And there has been sub-zero Bad Robot, Warner Brothers, J.J. Abrams films that have actually been on screen since they gave him $500 million. So when Zaslav came in and started looking at his spreadsheets of finances, and they're saying, huh, why did we pay J.J. Abrams $500 million? Because he hasn't made a fucking movie here.
What's our return on
Yeah,
investment on that?
what's going on? So, like, he did at one point have the like a Superman movie in development. He had a Dark Justice League Dark movie supposedly in development at some point in time. I think he even said that I think a Swamp Thing was connected to it, but then they made that show. So, like, all these things that were supposedly in the works that got killed, and then he was trying to make this TV series that was going to cost an additional $200 million. It's like that is completely aside from the 500 million they already gave him to be a first look deal. He wanted to make this new IP show for over $200 million. And like they killed that. Zaslav was like, no, that ain't fucking happening. And I thought after that, they were just gonna part ways with JJ at that point and cut their losses. But I guess that's not the case. But to circle back to my initial thought here was if they actually move forward with this, that Keanu is in another Constantine film and he returns as John Constantine, would you like them to kinda lean more into the comic source material or just keep going with kinda everything they set up and move further away from it and do their own thing, kinda like they did in that original film? Where do you kinda lay on that?
I'd like him to. I mean, obviously, with bringing the same director back, I think that obviously they're going to have to try and make it as tie it as closely as they can to what came before. But I would like them to see it start subtly shift back to more of the comic book character roots. You said something there that I had completely forgotten about, but it comes up every now and then. Is this Justice League Dark movie that's been in production for pre-production for it seems like 5 years now. I feel like this was announced back when they were doing the announcement of the original timeline of Justice League character films.
Been a minute.
I know it definitely was announced at the same time Joss Whedon's Batgirl was announced, and so we know how long ago that was. So since Bad Robot is involved with Justice League Dark, and hearing that they're involved with this, I kind of wonder if this won't be like a backdoor into that franchise. If they aren't going to fast track this film and get Keanu on board to do the Justice League Dark film, because then you also have the support of a big name actor on a franchise possibly film, and then they could use this now. Hopefully, they don't go the route of Batman v Superman and do like YouTube clips of the other characters in this film to introduce them. Hopefully, maybe we get one of the characters or maybe two of the characters showing up in this film to kind of get a foot into the door of that world, and then they expand it from there. But I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, I think I'd like it more if they lean back into the comic books. But I'm also curious if they're going to use it to kind of shift us towards that Justice League Dark film that seems to be or eventually coming.
It very well could be. If they were to actually, because my mindset with it initially when this came out, and I mean, at this point being the fact that, like, it's been so, like, 5, 6, 7 years now, I feel like, since God, I mean, it was around, like, the 2016 time, actually, so, yeah, like, 7, 8 years almost going on 9 years since they initially announced the Um, Justice League I don't I guess to be fair, they never really officially announced Justice League Dark by any means, but it has been reportedly in the works and in development, and J.J. Abrams was attached to it since that first look deal happened, which was I mean, that was alone at least like 4 to 5 years ago, and I think Warner Brothers was wanting to make Justice League Dark for at least, like I said, like 6, 7 years plus at this point. So I don't know if they're even like, I never even it's just kinda funny that you said that because I never even once considered the fact that that would even be something that was still on the table. So it could very well be a possibility that they would kinda pigeon toe this Constantine into a Justice League Dark, but then I also kinda feel like since this initial film was such a departure from the source material that, like, part of me wonders if that would even be, like, a good thing to do? If it maybe just let this thing be its own thing, but then at the same time, if you're gonna do Constantine and then you wanna do Justice League Dark in any capacity, why would you not just link them together at that point? That feels like the most logical thing to do. I mean, Warner Brothers, granted, is the only real studio out there at the moment who does have, like, a shared cinematic universe, but then they are doing their own thing with other properties. So it's not to say that they couldn't just do that by any means and just do the Constantine thing and let the Constantine thing be its own thing, but then do Justice League Dark with an entirely different Constantine. Who knows? I really do feel like because like you want to know another property that they have actually announced and they had a we did a video about this like years ago. They had a writer attached to it, and I haven't heard Zaslav drop the axe on this or not yet. But like they've been developing a Zatanna movie for
Yeah.
years now.
They had Paul
No
Dini attached
news.
to write it, right? I think Paul
I
Dini was
think
he
so.
attached at one point to write it?
I know they at least had I think they even maybe announced the didn't they announce the actress? I thought they even announced who was gonna do it at some point.
I
May
feel like
10th, Zatanna in danger of being canceled.
yeah. I feel like I heard that that one though was safe. Like they're trying to retool it to fit the bigger because that was I think it was supposed to be one of those HBO Max originals, and they were trying to they're thinking that maybe they'll retool it to bring it to the theater. I don't
Yeah,
know.
this was the exact article that we did the show on when it first dropped. It's the initial writer was the writer of A Promising Young Woman, which was a pretty good
Oh,
movie.
that's right. That movie was awesome. I really
Yeah,
like that.
so yeah, that was good. So
That's
that's
I
when
forgot about that. Yep.
when this dropped, I was actually pretty excited about that because that was a good little flick. And I was like, "Cool, this is great." I wasn't familiar with her outside of that, but, like, I love the Zatanna character. Her name's Emerald Fennell or Fennel, however you wanna pronounce that. So, yeah, and they see again here, set to be theatrically released through Bad Robot. And that's the kind of the more baffling thing is, like, why what was J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot doing all this time? This was so long ago. When did this was 2021, March 2021. Like,
Year and
it's
a half ago. Yeah.
yeah, like, it's when this and there's been literally if at least when I just looked up Zatanna movie, the only other news that popped up was an article from this past May about that it might be canceled. So, like, there's been no movement on this, but they could do honestly, the Justice League Dark concept is a great concept, and I'm kinda shocked as to why they haven't actually gotten anything off the ground with it because you could have 3 not that you have to do solo movies, like, you don't have to do solo movie, solo movie, solo movie, team up by any means, but you could have like, Zatanna absolutely warrants her own solo movie because you could have her dad, Zatara,
Yep.
being like they have Doctor Fate, follow me here, Doctor Fate's in Black Adam. You could totally have a Zatanna origin movie focus on you can kinda take themes from the Justice League, Young Justice rather, to where, like, Zatara has to take on the mantle of Doctor Fate or something, or maybe Zatara has to help Doctor Fate, Zatara dies, that makes Zatanna have to step up and do things, that she never had to do before, work with Doctor Fate, whatever it may be, like, you could do a really cool movie with just Zatanna related things. So just Zatanna, her dad Zatara, throw in Doctor Fate for some more flair, and like that's all connected, and you could do a really cool, even like multiversal kind of movie with just that. And
Mhm.
then you could have your John Constantine movie to introduce you into the hell aspect of everything, right? All the demons and all that shit. Then you could either do another solo movie or in a Constantine film introduce Etrigan and
Nice.
you have a solid that's 3 people. Like you could have Constantine have to meet up and work with the demon Etrigan that would be I would watch the fuck out of that movie. Every
Oh,
time
yeah.
Constantine ever in any cartoon or movie animated wise ever has to, like, work with even, like, the Justice League Dark film, the more recent one that was based on, like, the New 52 stuff, just Constantine's interaction with people is always fun, for me anyway, because I just love that Cockney I'm saying Cockney because of his accent. He's a cocky Cockney, just little asshole, and it's just fun to watch. And it's like but he's this dude who acts like that, but he can back up his shit. So it's like he's just this guy who has lost his soul and has just seen so much shit and he's just tired of it. So and I love that just personality. Like and Keanu's movie did have a little bit of that. So I think that might be some reason I did kind of relate to it even though it was such a departure. But I don't know, just conceptually they could do so much with Justice League Dark if they just I don't know, did something with it. Like,
Yeah.
what would your, if you had to do Justice League Dark, would you want, like, Keanu's Constantine to be the kinda pivot point for that, or would you want them to kinda go circling back to the original question, Would you want that to happen, or would you want Justice League Dark to have that more true comic book kind of adaptation for it, or would you just wanna have them do what works and just kinda go from there?
At this point, I just wanna see him make good movies. So, I'm
That's
willing
fair.
to again, coming from being an avid comic book reader for the past 30 years, I'm used to different interpretations of the character. I think that it serves them better with the bigger heroes like Superman, Batman, the Justice League characters to really make sure that they're getting the classic well-known versions of the characters on the screen just because that's people have expectations for those characters, especially people outside of comics. Um, but those of us that are in the comic world have seen so many different interpretations of these characters that while Keanu's Constantine is dramatically different from many of the Constantine versions that we've seen, it works to an extent, and the movie was good, so that also helps a lot. It's a lot easier to swallow something that isn't quite what you're expecting if it's as long as it's still good. So, my hope would be that obviously I would prefer because I, like you, have always had a strong affinity for the Constantine character, so I like that kind of British, first of all,
Yeah.
smoking, just kind of ass that just like he just doesn't he puts on airs that he doesn't care about anything or anyone, and he backs that up 95% of the time. It's that other 5% of the time when he does something that's completely selfless and completely um well, just it is that's completely selfless that you really see the character that he's worked so hard to hide, and I think that's what makes him so good is that you hardly ever get it. It happens once in a blue moon, but he just has these moments of heroism that make you understand why this guy is such a good guy, and yeah, so that's obviously that version is kind of the one I would hope to see.
That's why I love the character too, because, like, he doesn't just act like that because he's an asshole. It's like he's a dude who has, like I said, he lost his soul, so he knows if he dies, he's just damned. But he also has the gift of foresight, unfortunately, and actually knows what hell is like. Like, he's been
Yeah.
there, he's seen it, he knows what's gonna happen to him. So he's just pretty much at this point, he's just lost all fucks because of all the shit. He doesn't have a soul. He's damned to hell when this is all said and done. But then he still, unfortunately, has the gift of foresight. So still, even though he knows that if he dies, he's gonna be damned to hell, but he has this attachment to hell and everything. So he's still there killing demons and protecting the world from this bullshit, even though he knows if he dies in the process, he's gonna be damned to hell himself. That's a
Mhm.
really cool character and a cool story, you know what I mean? It's like, because it speaks to what you were saying, where it's like this he has these moments of, like, humanism and heroism in a lot of ways, but it's like, honestly, everything he does, in spite of knowing he's damned to hell, in and of itself is an act of heroism, really. Because it's like he puts himself in these situations where he knows he could potentially die at any point in time, but, like, no one else is aware of all this shit that's happening. No one else is aware of Lucifer and the minions and the demons and what they're doing, and he is aware of it, so he still tries to stop it, and, like, I like that. That's cool. I've always liked that. Nevertheless,
I was trying to I'm not gonna remember it. I'm not gonna remember it in time. There was a comic series that Tom Taylor did. Ah,
do
it
do
just finished
do
a couple
do do
it
do
just finished a
do
couple years ago.
do.
I might have to jump back in later on and bring it up. But anyway, Constantine throughout the entire series, it wasn't Injustice. It was the one with the zombie virus. Taylor, I can't. I'm trying to Google it real quick. There's a virus, zombie,
My mind
DC,
is not going to anything with Constantine right now with a zombie.
Deceased. It was the series was called Deceased, and they had
Hmm.
some follow-up series to it. And Constantine is just a he's just an ass throughout the whole thing. Throughout the whole thing, he's doing things. He's constantly turning on his allies. He's constantly doing things. But in the end, when his whole plan comes together, it's just beautiful. It's like, oh, yes, he was this terrible person this whole, but ultimately he took all that hate and all that blame and all the bad consequences of being this terrible person to get him to this point where they win in the end. It was just like it was just perfect. So, yeah, that kind of portrayal of the character is just great.
That's what I'm saying. That is like literally it's like he's burdened with the gift of foresight.
Yeah,
It's like and he's just like and he knows. Seeing this, I don't recall the story you're talking about, but like I totally can picture it in my mind. It's like he's a guy who will make the shitty call. He'll be the asshole. He'll do everything he needs to do just to make sure that they like him or his team have a better chance of winning in the end, right? Like,
yeah,
nevertheless, he'll do it. He's that guy. And those are always like, I don't know. That's kind of an obvious, like we've seen it a million times. Like it's a played out trope. Like, yes. But it really works with that character, especially when you put him like I said, when you throw in the situation of, like, he's a guy who has lost his soul, he's damned to hell, he fights demons, so there's a whole other layer to Constantine rather than just being some dickhead who ends up winning in the end, you know what I mean? So I've always
yeah,
I don't know, I've always really loved the Constantine character. Even and I even, like, we kinda said at the top, I love the Keanu Constantine too, so as much as I'd love to see, like, a more true Constantine in a movie, especially in like a Justice League Dark kind of movie, like that'd be great. But like in the end, I'm happy with just having another Keanu Constantine movie. Hold on. Give me 1 second. John, take the wheel
yeah.
for a minute.
Yeah, so if you haven't, if you're watching it or you're catching us on one of our videos that's posted later on, um, go check out Deceased if you have any interest in graphic novels or comics. You can actually go to your probably your local library and pick it up there if you don't want to drop a dime on it. But it was an excellent series and it has one of the best portrayals of Constantine that I can remember in a long while. And then there's of course the other the Constantine, the Hellblazer series. The DC Vertigo Hellblazer series is another one to go check out if you're interested in good Constantine stories. There were a number of writers. Brian Azzarello had a great run on that. Garth Ennis had a great run on that. I don't know if too many of you remember, but Daredevil had a really popular run where he traded off between like three different writers. I think Brian Michael Bendis did a run, then Ed Brubaker did a run, and then there was a third guy that did a run. But each author, each writer, when they ended their series, left Daredevil in this really terrible position, and the next author had to figure out how to pick up the pieces and continue the story on. That kind of was that kind of same type of storytelling happened in the Hellblazer comic series from Vertigo, where they had these a number of different writers that would come in and write 6 issues or 12 issues of the book and then hand it off to another writer, and it was just some of the best comic book storytelling. It all made sense. There was a great through line from book to book, but each writer kind of left Constantine in this really terrible position. The next writer had to pick it up and try and solve the issue of what the previous writer had left them, or sometimes just add to Constantine woes and let the next writer have an even bigger burden to shoulder. So yeah, Constantine would be the Hellblazer series would be another one to pick up. Um, that aside, I don't know. We were talking about Bad Robot a little bit. I don't know what Bad Robot's going to be doing. It sounds like that Zaslav is kind of removed DC maybe from because at one point, we're talking about they had the Zatanna book or the Zatanna movie. They had the Constantine film. They had the Superman film that JJ was working on. So they had a number of irons in the DC fire over at Bad Robot. But none of those have come to fruition. And it looks like Zaslav is kind of, from all the reports that we're hearing, is looking for somebody to head up the DCU division. What are they calling it now? I think I saw that they're not going to refer to it as the DCEU anymore. It might just be the DCCU, the DC Cinematic Universe. They might just be taking the Marvel moniker. Regardless, they're going to try and find somebody to head that up. And obviously, I would think that if they would find a Kevin Feige type character to head that up, JJ's Bad Robot would their involvement would be, I would guess, minimized quite a bit by that sort of restructuring of that side of Warner Brothers. Um, so I can't say I can't say I was obviously I was excited about the Zatanna movie that they had announced. I can't say I was that excited about the other stuff. The Constantine one, I don't even think I realized that Bad Robot was involved with that up to that point. So we'll see what happens with them. Um, Other than that, I can't think of anything else I really have to say on the Constantine front. Um, I think his name was Matt Ryan, the guy that played him in DC Legends of Tomorrow. He was phenomenal. If you're not familiar with him, there was a short-lived Constantine show that ran. I think it even ran on NBC. I think it was network television. It ran on, and it was canceled after one season. And the show wasn't bad. It just, I think Rob mentioned it, they didn't do a great job portraying the character of Constantine. He kind of was a secondary character in his own show in a way. So that didn't last very long, but the actor they had playing Constantine was just absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to look him up real quick. Um, I think it was, um,
Which show are you talking about? You talking about Matt Ryan
yeah, it's Matt Ryan, right? That was the actor's name.
and Legend of Tomorrow and in his own show
Legend of
too?
Tomorrow. Yeah, so he had his own show. So
Yeah,
I was telling him that he had his own show for a minute, and then he went over and he was on Legends of Tomorrow, and he was just a really great character. He actually made an appearance, and I'm not sure how many people remember this. He made an appearance on the Lucifer show,
he
correct?
did. No,
It went
it was on the crossover thing.
on the
Lucifer showed
crossover
up on their crossover, and he
on
went
their
and knocked on.
crossover.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
really
so
good.
he had some interaction with the Lucifer character from the Lucifer show that
Yeah,
ran on Netflix and then moved over, or ran on Fox and then moved over to Netflix,
that was a
and
great show.
that was such a good show. And yeah, but his crossover with Lucifer was really good too.
That's what if I was gonna say. I'm glad you brought that up because I was gonna say before, just like a minute ago, if they make another Constantine or anything and Lucifer is involved, I would love a Tom Ellis cameo at the very least, or just him back as Lucifer in some capacity.
Eyes the role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love, even though that's the thing too, his Lucifer was a pretty big departure from that series as well, but it just was so good. Like, I just
That's
loved
the thing, like,
it was so
that's what I
good.
was saying earlier about Constantine, like, yeah, ideally, I would love the classic comic book version, but do it well. I think that's part of the reason that some of these like some of those Punisher movies that came out that weren't that great, it was because the movies were bad movies. You're changing the character somewhat, but then you're making a bad movie on top of it, and it's just yeah, it just doesn't work. Make a good movie. Make a good movie first, and then if you can make it, with the classic interpretations, great. But
That's the honestly, the thing that most people, I think, they either forget about that or they don't take that in consideration a lot of times. Because in the end, winning cures everything. If you
yeah,
make a good movie, first and foremost, that's all anyone's gonna really see, 9 times out of 10. Just like with Keanu's original Constantine movie, like, I can sit here and go and nitpick every little thing that doesn't line up with XYZ in the comics or whatever, and even that, in the end, is like, well, which version of the comics are you even talking about? Like, that's one thing that always bugs me is when people complain about, like, this character or this movie, just it wasn't like it was in the comics, and it's like, well, which comic are you talking about? Like, there's been a million different interpretations of these characters in the comics. So it just I always hate that, like, that excuse. That just topic that gets brought up is, like, the most annoying thing in the world to me, 'cause it's like, "That Batman wasn't Batman." Which Batman? Like, there's Year One, Dark Knight Returns, like, which one? Like, Long Halloween? Because none of those Batmen are the same Batman. And everybody, I'm pretty sure, loves all 3 of those stories. Like, Like, you know what I mean? And so it always that honestly always, like, Peter Griffin, that grinds my gears, right? Like, it's just like, "It's not like how it was in the comics." A lot of things aren't. A lot of comics aren't like how they were in the comic before, or the comic before, or the comic we talked about this before, like, I think it may have been last week or something where, like, it always has blown my mind when people don't like, their main argument is just that, like, it's different from the comics and stuff, and it's like, but at the same time, these people who are claiming they're familiar with the comics just forget the fact that the comics are iterative of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they constantly have new iterations of each character. Like, sometimes more than once in a single year, you'll see a different version if there's an Elseworld story or some storyline that's finishing off, and then they start a new run of someone like, it happens all the time. So it's always so weird how it's like when these movies come out that people are spending hundreds of millions of dollars and like 9 times not 9 times out of 10, but more often than not anymore nowadays, they're at least good movies. Like, take the comics out of the equation. This is kind of a segue into the Lord of the Rings conversation here later on. This is a good segue to it. It's not really a segue because I'm not going to go into that right now, but it's going to be a callback. Nevertheless, it's like you have all these things. You can make an adaptation that's a one-to-one thing, and if you don't do it well, it's going to suck no matter what. So you just have to focus on making a good movie.
Yeah.
Like, the good movie bit comes first. Like, that's exactly as you said. Like, focus on making a good movie. If use what you can in the comics. If it's not working, change it. Because not everything translates from the page to the screen. If it did, everything would. Like, we'd have like one-to-one interpretations in every level, but we don't because it doesn't work all the time.
To be
So
fair, I'm probably guilty of this. I'm probably guilty of complaining about something not being like it was in the comics. And you can probably go back through some of our old clips and find me being that way. I'm sure everybody has their own personal
Netflix
touchstones.
Batman.
Yeah, well, I'd argue
Well,
that that
that's the
wasn't a
one.
very good movie to begin with. So I think that one,
But
especially
see,
the theatrical
that's
cut
to the
that I
point.
saw.
That's to the point, though. That is to the point. If that movie came out and Ben Affleck's Batman did exactly what he did, but whatever didn't work, flip it and make it work, no one
Mhm.
would be talking about that stuff. I think it's because it's compounded. So I think a lot of the time people are somewhat justified, but I don't think it's always considered that, like, well, overall the movie wasn't good. So focusing on one character, that's not going to make the movie good. Like, if Ben Affleck's Batman, the things you didn't like about Batman, if that was different, wouldn't have changed that movie. You know what I mean? It's that movie was still that movie. So whether or not you take out some elements of that Batman, that wasn't what made the movie bad. It was just the movie overall wasn't as good as it could have been. Maybe that influenced it, sure, but
And
overall,
to
I think it was a minor thing.
And to be fair, I don't like I know a lot of people love that film and love that interpretation and think that that's a great movie, and everybody has their own opinions, and obviously those are valid opinions for those people. I'm glad that there are people that can watch that and enjoy that. I don't even think it was Zack Snyder's fault that that movie doesn't work for me personally.
That was
Um,
rushed,
that movie was I feel like that movie was just that was the studio as
100%.
we saw with Justice League, when Zack Snyder is given the creative freedom to put together his versions of the movie, and even Batman versus Superman to a degree, when you went from the theatrical version to the ultimate cut of that film, it became a much better film. But I would argue tooth and nail with anyone that that film, the theatrical run of that film was an absolute mess.
Wasn't as good as it could have been.
Yeah. So
But to your point,
like I
that
said,
was
not the creator's fault, not even the actor's fault. That was
no, yeah, that's I really
studio
do.
interference.
Yeah. I take even though I'm not an actor, I take offense myself, and I feel empathy for any actors who get shat on for their role in a movie. Because, like, in the end, they're just working a job, they're doing what they were told to do, They're there to get a paycheck just like you are to get a paycheck. Like, it's not Ben Affleck's fault that you didn't like Batman in that movie if you didn't like it, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's like he just did his job. Like, and he did his job well, period. Like, if you didn't like the interpretation, it's not really Ben Affleck's fault by any means. So I hate when people just like it's the same thing happens with, happened really bad with, Carol Danvers, what's her name? Captain Marvel. Brie Larson.
Brie Larson,
She
yeah.
gets shit on all the time, and it's like, dude, she's just doing her job, and, like, if you and I get that some people, like, they I don't know, some people might say things that they don't agree with if like, in their personal life, like, if they're tweeting shit they don't like or whatever, they don't like the person themselves in some way, I get it, but when you're watching a movie, you gotta separate the art from the artist in some capacity too, I feel like, depending, right? I can see why it would be hard for people and some more when some people do some more egregious things. Like, I wouldn't fault anybody for not wanting to watch a Kevin Spacey film. I get that. At the same time, though, does all the work they did up until the bad stuff like erase your enjoyment of all that stuff? Like, I don't know. It's kind of up for interpretation. Everyone's going to have their own subjective opinion towards that. But I don't know. It's more of a philosophical question more so than anything. I don't even know where I was going with
It's a
this,
good
but
question. I would love to spend time discussing that. I'm not sure we have the time tonight to dive deep into that, but I have very strong thoughts on that when it comes to people like Joss Whedon and, like you said, Kevin Spacey, and just there's a lot of people out there that have been that's been revealed that they're not that there some of
perfect.
them are just downright bad people, some
Hmm.
of them are flawed people, as we all are, and some of them are, good people that made dumb mistakes. But to do all those, no matter what category they fall in, does it negate the work that was done on or the projects that they've worked on? My contention is no, but again, it's something I would take a while to dive into.
I think it's always a situation much like movies in their own right. It's a subjective thing. Everyone's gonna have their own feeling towards it, but, like, even further than that, everyone's gonna have their own break point for each individual, like, person in question, right? Like, depending on the heinous act, I could see more people not wanting to watch that person's stuff or listen to that person's music or whatever it be, right? Like if some guy is just like if some actor or musician or whatever is just if they have a different political view than you, that might not be enough for you to not want to listen to their stuff or watch their movies, right? But if they, took it a step further and like, oh, like Johnny Depp, like, oh, now they're accused of being a wife beater. Is that like that might be a line for a lot of people, right? Like it's different for everybody. And then you go into like the Kevin Spacey stuff where it's like, okay, now or the what's his name? The big producer guy. Forget
Weinstein.
yeah, Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. So it's like now we're or Weinstein, whatever it is. We're getting into it's like there's another layer. So it's like there is going to be a level for everybody, I feel like, that like at some point there's a line for a lot of people, but I also do like subsequently in my mind, this is how I handle it, right? And this is obviously all down to personal opinion. And like this is not how I 100% take every last thing, but I think a one way that might make it easier for people who struggle with that is kind of a cop out in a lot of ways too, but it's like look at everything that they did up until you found out about that, because it might be easier for you to still like and appreciate all of that stuff that happened before, but then maybe, if you're really against it and really just like what they did was just too disgraceful, you didn't like it, don't support them in any way from that point on, right? So it's like everything that was prior maybe that wouldn't affect you as much if you still like wanna if you still
Well,
wanna like, that any Kevin Spacey movie, essentially.
my contention has always been, and this came up with I'm a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, and Angel. Angel, I would contend that Angel is almost a better show in some aspects.
Yep.
I always,
A lot of people say that.
yeah. But anyway, that my fandom of that aside, I've always loved Joss Whedon stuff. I love Firefly, Dollhouse. I loved it all. Joss Whedon by all accounts, isn't the best guy in the world. I don't know. It's hard to separate the truth from the fiction too, because there's a lot of people that say he was a terrible person. There's a lot of people that say I never had that kind of experience with Joss. Um, and I'm not saying that the people that are accusing him of the stuff he's been accused of are lying. I'm just saying sometimes the truth falls somewhere in between everybody. But anyway, that aside, let's say he's a bad person. Let's say he's a bad person. The thing about movies and television shows and entertainment, and most entertainment in general, is many times it's not a singular person that is
Yeah,
creating these
100%.
things. It's a
Mhm.
collaborative effort. So, does the work of all the people that were on Buffy and Angel get discounted just because Joss Whedon was the creator of it? And my contention has always been no, no. Does The Usual Suspects, one of my favorite films of all time, become a bad movie because Kevin Spacey isn't a good guy? My contention is no. There's the writers and the directors and the production people and then the other actors that were in that movie that make that movie so good and so
Thousands
engrossing.
of people work on a movie, like
Exactly.
hundreds of thousands sometimes.
And so
Right.
does the actions of one person negate all that work from all those other people? And I personally, my personal belief is that no, it doesn't. Like I can sit down and watch those movies and enjoy them just as much as I always did. I'm not gonna be lining up for a new Kevin Spacey movie that comes out
Yeah,
and
exactly.
buying tickets and stuff. And I know that there are people that are working on, but it's a different thing. They know that they're working on a Kevin Spacey movie, that's the risk, the inherent risk that they're taking is that this movie will not do well because he's attached to it. So there's that knowledge, that foresight that's built into any future, pr things that they produce or involved with.
Like
And
with
that's
Will
always
Smith right now,
exactly.
right?
Very, very
Because like,
important.
he
Current
does yeah, he didn't
example.
have, like, a heinous act, right? Like and Will Smith is kind of an interesting case study, in all honesty, like, if you really look at it, because, like, up until the slap, it's like the snap, but it's like the slap for him. But, like, up until the slap, he, by all accounts, was a very beloved, like, always done he was very beloved by the fans, beloved by everyone
Oh,
he's
yeah.
worked with. He never stepped out of line publicly in any way, to my knowledge, at least. Like, he has never done he's been a great guy on set for everybody, from everything I've heard. Just an all-around good-ass
Good
dude.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, just good dude. He had this one moment of idiocy, and a public display of idiocy and just wrongdoing. So it's like, is that enough to condemn everything he's done, but then condemn him for just eternity at this point? Was like the slap, was that enough to essentially like cancel someone? Really? It's like, because like for some people it may be. For others, it's like I wouldn't fault anybody for feeling either way about it, because it's just like movies, it's a subjective thing, right? Like, it's if you think it's, "Nope, he's done." If he's done to you, that's fine. But I don't know if it really would take away from, like, kinda like I was saying, does that act that happened in, like, 2021 or 2, whenever it was, does that take away from everything he did prior? 'Cause I think at the very least, you'd have to say no. Like, logically in my mind, it's like, well, nothing bad ever happened until then, so it's like, there's, like, this point in time where, like, it was all good till here, so maybe after that, you can kinda look at it in, like, a different light. But like, if I were to go and turn on the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I'm watching a Will Smith, literally, who has not slapped Chris Rock.
Yeah.
So, it's like it's a weird fourth dimension kind of thing that you're experiencing, honestly, because it's like the gift of foresight, like I've been saying, like, you know what's gonna happen, but it hasn't happened yet. Like, I'm sitting here watching this time capsule of Will Smith from The Fresh Prince, and he hasn't done anything bad, so why should I condemn this? But going
So
forward, maybe, I don't know.
so with as with the snap, they were able to create the or get the second Infinity Gauntlet, and Hulk was able to snap and undo everything. if Will Smith, like, slaps Harvey Weinstein, will that undo everything? Is there can we have
Possible.
a second slap? Does Will Smith just need to find the right person to slap to undo everything?
Dude, that actually would be a really funny bit. I don't know if it might be too soon, but I could really find it, like, funny if Will Smith put out a video that said, like, something along the lines of, like, you "I know I slapped the wrong person, so please send me, like, let's line up all these bad people in the industry for me to just readjust that slap and let's point it towards, let me go slap Kevin Spacey, let me go
Yeah,
slap Joss Whedon, let me go slap Harvey Weinstein, and then maybe you'll forgive me for slapping Chris Rock, who did
Chris
not
Rock.
deserve to be slapped in any way, shape, or form." That would actually be a pretty funny thing.
We have just solved Will Smith's PR nightmare. Will
Yeah,
Smith, feel free to contact us, and we'll
you
be your
gotta
new
own it.
PR firm.
Yeah, he should just put out a video just saying, like, "I'm gonna put my services to use. I can't find work as an actor anymore because of the slap, so I'm gonna just start slapping
I
people."
will
So,
slap people, bad
yeah,
people.
man, you send me any bad person who deserves to be slapped, and I'll do it, damn it. That would actually be funny. I would pay to watch that movie. It could be called The Slap,
Slap.
and, you just kinda go from there. It kind of writes itself. I mean,
Yeah,
there's a laundry list of bad people who deserve a good slapping.
there is.
Well, so
He could travel through time, he could slap Hitler, he could
yeah,
slap
dude.
Mussolini, he could just
It's just a whole 30-minute bit. You wanna throw in, have Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool come and toss him the time travel bracelet from the end of Deadpool 2 and just say, "Here, I don't need this anymore." Like, "There you go. Slap who you want." That'd be great.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
we've just saved Will Smith's career.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, it is a good question though, because like, and there's more heinous things that like people have done, and it's like, it's a very it's a lengthy topic. You could kind of go on forever, and you could always constantly bring up these examples of just like, well, is this too much? Well, is this too much? Well, is this too much? And it's like, well, again, it's just kind of all up to the individual. Like each
Mhm.
individual is going to have their own break point, and you just kind of got to make that call yourself. Really, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't got much else to it, really. But I'd be
Yeah,
curious
I'm
to
not
hear
even
what anyone
sure.
else thinks. Like, let us
Definitely.
know. Yeah, let us know. Like, do you?
Would you pay to see Will Smith slap somebody?
And would, more importantly, would that negate the
Would it
slap?
negate, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
would you feel better towards Will Smith and his quote unquote heinous act if he repurposed it, right? You
yeah,
readjust the slap, you slap who deserves to be slapped. Would you now you're on board with it? It's like, well, Will, you're gonna go Big Willie style on all these bad people, so I'm on board with that. Like, I don't know. Yeah, good topic. Good topic for
I don't even
sure.
know how I don't know how we got to that from Constantine. How did we jump from Constantine all the way over to Will Smith slapping people to make amends?
I'll have to play it back. I really have no
Yeah,
idea.
right? Tell
I
us in the
j
comments
yeah,
how we got to we were talking about Matt Smith and Constantine, and
Matt
I can't
Ryan, not
Ryan, sorry.
Damon.
Yeah,
When you said that, I immediately saw Damon Targaryen. He's now forever Damon Targaryen in my head. He's not Prince Philip, he's not whatever his name was in Morbius. He's Damon Targaryen.
yeah.
But that's tomorrow. I can't get into House of the Dragon now because that's tomorrow. But you know what else was tonight that we're supposed to do anyway? We're supposed to be doing this. So what were your thoughts on the
Yep,
She-Hulk episode?
it was
We good.
good.
This will be pretty
Um,
quick, I imagine.
I'm gonna jump right to the end though. That last shot at the end, he's coming.
Who?
He's
Which you?
coming.
Who you referring to?
What was in that hat box?
Oh yeah, Daredevil. Yeah. Right,
Daredevil.
right, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
he's
was the
coming.
only thing that really like that's kind of like I said at the beginning of the show here. Like we might really need to call. I may have made all these graphics for She-Hulk after show or not because like really isn't much to talk about if the show continues like this, and it's not bad. It's not a bad thing in any way. I enjoy the show. I will say, of all the episodes, this was probably the most boring one to me.
I'd
It took
agree.
it took me a while to get through it, like, 'cause I started watching it 'cause I usually I gotta get up pretty early to take my daughter to school, and then I have like an hour or so before work starts. So I usually have like I can normally get like Rings of Power in or whatever, like first thing in the morning because I'm not even doing anything. I have this hour to kill. And I was just like, I turned this on and I paused it at some point, and it's a very short episode, mind you, and I was able to pause it and forget that I was even watching it. So like it took me like I watched probably like 5 minutes of it, really wasn't paying much attention because it didn't grab me, nothing was really happening, and then it was, like, 3 hours later, like, around lunchtime, I was like, "Oh, shit, I was watching She-Hulk," and then I had to think, "Did I finish She-Hulk?" And I couldn't even remember, but then obviously I didn't, I only watched, like, 5 minutes of it. That said, I didn't think it was bad, it just was nothing was really happening with it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that is not necessarily a bad thing by any means, but it just wasn't,
I
I don't know.
I think it's the nature of the show too. It's hard to find a lot to comment on sitcoms. I mean, sitcoms tend to not have they have like an overarching narrative that they're kind of trying to tell, but they don't break down into, multiple storylines where you're following multiple characters doing multiple things that go on throughout the season. Like this had the very small subplot of her assistant and the other lawyer she works with trying to find an outfit for her because her clothes are goofy or whatever. Um,
I did love Pug, like, being, real hard into the sneakers, though. I thought that was the
that was
best scene of
great.
the show. Like,
What did he
sadly, I
say?
think that was the best one.
I love the collector line that he had. One to rock and one to
Yeah,
I can't, one I can't remember what
one
it was
to
now.
one to rock and one to stock.
One to
W
rock and one to side. I
was
love
that
that. I
it?
love
I
that
think
line.
that's
Yeah,
it.
that was it.
If that wasn't it, then you're welcome because I just gave you another one,
Yeah,
but I
there you
think that
go.
was it, right?
That was a great line. I really
No,
like
yeah.
that one because that
Dude,
is the collector mentality.
yeah. No, for sure, like, and, like, I really, like I just liked the Pug character from the first time he was introduced, and I think they haven't given him, like, really anything to do. Like, he had that one scene in, like, what it was, episode 3 when he had to, represent the shitty ex-coworker that, Jen had at the time,
Yep.
the dude who had the best line in the series in that, like, 1st or 2nd episode when he saw the girl and he said, like, "There's a hot chick over there. Imma go talk to it." But
Yeah.
like, it was the
Yeah.
funniest fucking thing, like, out of nowhere, just like, that was it, and then he leaves. That was hilarious.
Like if you
Uh,
can't find a way to make it more douchey, you have
yeah,
them refer to
like
females as
yeah,
objects.
exactly, just like, there
Yeah,
it is, like, that's everything you need to know about that character, and it was
in
in
one line.
one line, yep, and that was
Yep.
so great. It was really good line. But then Pug, his first appearance was when he brought her the basket and, like, had all the stuff for her first day there, and he drew her a freaking map of where to go to the best like,
Good
that's the
bad.
kind of
Yep.
friend that I want to have. If someone were to tell me where the best toilet was in the building, like, that dude is looking out for your best interests on,
And
like, like, very
he
resourceful on a level you don't even think about. Like
he's agreeing to reciprocate favors without like he's tacitly just saying like, yeah, I'm gonna give you your favor back too with interest and stuff too. Like it's
mhm.
nice to have that verbal affirmation that they're gonna do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Some
And then
people just assume you're gonna help them out and never help you out.
exactly, yeah. And I also loved in the last episode with the, it was like a really short thing, but I just thought it was funny, but it's just a testament to how much at least I've liked the guy's portrayal of the Pug character anyway. Like, when they were dealing with the shape-shifting elf and the elf, like, leaves his office, and when,
Yeah.
like, he finds out it's him, and she says, like, the line about him, like, being shitty to women or something or whatever, and he comes out just real quick, it's just like, That's not true, like, you know me." Like, I mean, it's just it's just come on.
Such a good yeah.
It's just he's doing a great job, even though they're not giving him much to do. He's really selling it. He's making the character, like, really likable, so I wish they would use him a bit more because he is very likable, but
I will also say the way they're using this Titania character, they're having conflict and they're fighting each other, but they're not physically fighting each other, which I thought I will give them credit. It's kind of clever. Because I think the expectation was that they were going to be throwing fists at each other every time they encountered each other, and that is not what they're doing. So, um, I can't say I actually kind of enjoyed that aspect of it.
I would say, like, where I kinda, like, to be honest, I didn't even pick up on that nuance that you just described, like, and that's a good take if that's how you took it, because that might kinda make it me look at it in a different light in some capacity, but I just thought, like, overall, and this is more of a marketing department problem, they kinda set everything up for us to assume what you just said was gonna happen. Like, all the trailers and everything showed, like, they were gonna this Titania was gonna be the villain, like,
Yeah,
the bad guy. They were gonna fight, and
and
that hasn't happened.
the actress that plays her has been all over the media, like all over the interview circuit. She's done the interview circuit for the show and stuff. So yeah,
Mhm.
I was under the impression that maybe she was going to be like a multiple episode villain that She-Hulk was going to have to overcome, and in a way, she is having to overcome her, but it's a completely different type of conflict than what
Mhm.
I expected.
And I like the aspect of, for one, there's been a lot of things that the show has kinda promised that I don't feel like they've been really leaning into enough in a lot of ways, which was the sitcom, lawyer show, breaking the fourth wall. They're using it all, but not as much as I kind of expected them to. Like,
Yeah.
we've really only seen those, like, we had the court case at the beginning and that we didn't really get to see the court case, though. There was no actual drama or story built around the court case when Titania burst through the wall at the end of the first episode, and it was over. Like, that was really it, which was, again, kinda also disappointing from the aspect of the show had been kind of insinuating there was gonna be a big fight kind of aspect with, Titania and everything, so that's kind of one of the, like, more not really like a bad thing, but it's kind of like one of the problematic things, if you will, in, like, some capacity anyway. It's not like a bad thing, but it's just kind of a thing where it's like, yeah, just like they overpromised and underdelivered on some of these things. Because like, the fourth wall breaks are really when they've used the fourth wall breaks, I've felt like they've all worked really well, but I feel like they just haven't used them enough, like, in a lot of ways. Like, you watch Deadpool 1, I think he breaks the fourth wall just in the first Deadpool movie, in the first 5 minutes, more than then Jen's broken the fourth wall throughout the entire series at this point. Not that that's making the show unenjoyable or anything, it was just something that I just expected more of in some capacity, and then I just think that because of how much they hyped up in the marketing, the Titania stuff, that it's been kind of lackluster, just what we've seen, and I'm not meaning there needs to be, like, a big fight with them or anything like that. It's just like all we got, like, it's just the way the Titania character's been portrayed has been kinda lackluster, and it's not because of the fighting, it's just like, all she's really done is burst through a wall in the first episode, and then gets knocked out in one punch, and then we don't see her again until this episode, really, and it's because of the name thing, and that's it.
Yeah.
So, not that I didn't like how it all played out, I thought it all played out fine, it was all good, I liked it. I just it's just a weird thing, and I feel like the problem with almost every Disney Plus show, honestly, comes down to the runtime. It's just they're just the shows are just so short, it feels like they don't have enough time to add more stuff to it, because I feel like this if this episode would have just happened at the end of the first episode or something, like, if they coulda cut it up differently to where it was all kind of part of the same thing, so you get the Titania arc like done with in the first 2 episodes, maybe I feel like it would have been better or something. Like, I don't know. There's just something with I think the runtime is really affecting it because I never feel this way after watching honestly any show that's not on Disney Plus. Like, aside from What We Do in the Shadows, which is on Hulu, that's the only show that I feel like is too short, but it's just because it's so goddamn good, I don't want it to be a 20-minute show. I would much rather that be a 45-minute show just because it's so good and they do so much in that 21, 23 minutes, and it
Yeah.
always works. Like, even though the show ends, like, that's how a sitcom's supposed to work. Like, they introduce a storyline, they fucking execute that storyline, and it's hilarious 99.9% of the time. Like, that show is what they should be. If they wanna make 21-minute episodes, they need to watch What We Do in the Shadows, and that's what they need to do. Like, I don't know, but I don't know. I didn't really have too much else to say about She-Hulk, unfortunately. Like,
No,
it's
I
good, but
we got our little tease of the mutants in the MCU again with the credit scene and the picture of all the different shoes that are created in the MCU.
that,
Um,
and then, like we said off the top, the Daredevil scene. I will say, now that I'm skimming through this, there's been some speculation about this guy who, oddly enough, got reintroduced. You remember the date that she had with him?
yeah.
She seemed to be like acute, or he seemed to be like acutely interested in her powers and what she could or couldn't do, and just weird things like that that you wouldn't necessarily ask a normal person on a date. And then I don't know if you saw this, but people saw that initially. I think it was in the screeners that people had for the show. This character's name in the credits was Hulk name, like whatever his name is. Like if his name is Dan, it said like Hulk Dan. And but in the credits, once it released to the public on Disney Plus, now it just says what his name was, not Hulk, whatever.
Huh.
So people thought like, well, maybe there's some different, deeper connection to Hulk, or like someone who is working against Hulk, like someone maybe working for the leader. Maybe he's with the wrecking crew. Maybe he's someone who's not necessarily the guy behind the wrecking crew, but is somehow a part of them. Because like I could see the wrecking crew, like, we saw them try to get her blood and failed. So maybe another member of the wrecking crew, maybe someone higher up on the food chain was like, "Let's try a different approach." Like, and then
Oh,
they see that she's on Tinder or whatever, and then this is where he comes in. Like, he sees to try to get more I could see that happening. I don't know if that's what is happening, but I thought it was interesting that what could have been looked at as a throwaway funny date scene turned into he's a recurring character now. And his name used to be presented differently in the credits. So when you add those 3 things together, it makes it kinda questionable, kind of interesting, but I don't know if that's really a thing. Were you aware of any of that stuff and people talking about this guy outside of that?
no, I hadn't heard any of that. I mean, they brought back this guy. They also brought back some of the other date guys. So
They did, yeah.
they gave this guy a little. It seemed like they gave him a little bit more bigger of a role in this episode. So maybe it will turn into something. But yeah, it's been a slow burn.
Yeah, it's I'm it's a weird thing because I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't bad in any way, but, I think it coulda just worked a lot better if there was a good 20 more minutes after it or something.
Yeah,
Because I feel like it's like conversely, like this will be a callback to Rings of Power in a lot of way when we get into that in a minute. But it's like Rings of Power like has set up a lot of things, and then they just you don't even come back to it like in an entire episode sometimes. But the problem with like Rings of Power is that like you said it first after we watched the first 2 episodes. You said, like, it seems something along the lines of, "It seems like they're just setting up cliffhangers for the intent of having a cliffhanger," or something like that. It's like, it seems like they're just unanswering questions just for the sake of having a cliffhanger or something
yeah.
along those lines. and they really are. Like, they're like, I'll save it for when we get back to it, but with this show, it's like they've set up a lot of stuff, and they just haven't even touched back upon it, right?
Yeah,
Like, the abomination stuff was kind of the first thing that was set up to be, like, the overarching plot of the series in some capacity, but, like, it seems like it could just be like, was that it? Are we never gonna see Blonsky again? Is she got him his parole? Is he done now? Is that a thing? Who knows? We saw the wrecking crew and someone's trying to get her blood. Haven't seen anything else since. No indication of who was trying to do it. No tease of anything relating to that. Hasn't been brought up again one time. We haven't seen or heard her talking to Hulk since the second or third episode, whatever it was, when he was leaving the planet. So, like, there's all these things that have been kind of set up, but like Titania, was this the end of that? Because like Titania was kind of set up, but they had this court case now. So are they done with that? Like, there's just a lot of things that I feel like have been set up and either seemingly could be at a stopping point, but it would be an unfulfilling stopping point if it was.
sure.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's a weird thing. I tried to go through and see like any like costumes that stuck out to me in this, and I didn't really see anything. Did you see anything when you were going through here?
I didn't, but to be honest, I was finishing this up right before we came on, and I was not paying that close attention to his costume shop.
The only thing
Um,
I will say is this guy leaving, I did catch this when I think it's at the earlier scene because now she's picking up her suits. I can't remember if it's the first or second one. When she walks in, is it this time or the first time she goes here? I think it's the first time. There's that guy who is leaving the place. So it's maybe here? Must be here. Let me see. This guy right here. There he is.
yeah.
That is the Frogman guy. That's Frogman. So that's the same actor who he's on like the credits for being. This is interesting. This mannequin has a little fat belly. No, because you gotta think this dude makes these things custom fit for all of his all of his clients. Who,
Uh-huh.
who who do we know that the only person we know that has a little beer belly is Red Guardian. There's no one else
Yeah.
that's kind of fat right now in the MCU, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is
No,
Red
no.
Guardian, but I'm just I just noticed that. Like, why is this guy got a little he's got a little pooch there, and he's got a package too. Look at that, boom! Look at that. But yeah, so that guy
This
walking
little
through,
dad bod going on there.
he does have a bit of a dad bod, a little bit
Rocking
of
the
a
dad
dad
bod.
bod. Yeah, so that guy though is Frogman. That's the only thing that I caught in any way, shape, or form is that's the actor who's credited for playing Frogman, and that was him walking out. But that's it. I don't know what's going on with this thing. Like, that's just I mean, I don't know what that is. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know who this is. This is like this looks like some Night's Watch kinda garb, like the little
Yeah.
fur that would go over the coat or the capes or something. Yeah, I couldn't just pick any I saw the beer belly, I saw Frogman,
Which is kind
nothing.
of funny because I'm surprised that there wasn't something, at least one. I mean, I guess there is. I guess this was our one, was
There's
the
the
Daredevil
one.
one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you would think that there would have been at least one or maybe even two or three references to other MCU characters, even if they were ones we knew, just because getting to this guy seemed to be an issue, and he
Mhm.
seemed to be very exclusive to only certain superheroes. Yet we can't figure out like we can't identify any other superheroes besides the final shot. So
Mhm. Well, that's what like this obviously looks like a female jacket of some kind, so maybe he's making the Thunderbolts stuff right now, so maybe that was Red Guardian with the beer belly.
yeah.
Maybe this is for, Yelena,
Elena,
and then this honestly kinda looked like This looked like it's like a vest. It could be for Bucky. It's got a vest. Like there's no
Yeah, I have a
sleeves,
hard
right?
time I have a hard time okay. Yeah, I have a hard time picking those up. I'm gonna have to watch them on my TV and see if I can't pick up more details on a bigger screen.
I mean, this has a kind of Captain America looking vibe with like the straps and like little hip guard here, but like a Bucky interpret because like I could
Yeah.
see them giving Bucky a similar stitched kind of vest to wear that kind of looked like Cap. You know, I could see maybe that's Bucky's suit. And then there's what? There's like one, two more there, and then the girl there. So that's like 4 or 5 people from Thunderbolts. If that's the case, maybe he is making Thunderbolts his gear. It could be. Well, then obviously, yeah, Daredevil with best look we really had at the new yellowish kind of helmet there. I don't know. How do
Is
you?
it yellow? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Supposedly, like
I'm so colorblind. I do not get yellow out of that.
the funny thing is, this is really worn down. Like, 'cause it's totally yellow, but this is like it's like Daredevil ordered the weathering. He paid extra money for them to weather his helmet after the fact because, like, there is a lot of scuff mark here. You can totally see the gray or silver shining through. This horn is, like, still totally gray. Tons of scrapes here on the top, everywhere, over the eyebrow. He's like, "I need a new helmet, but, like, I still want it to look like I get into fights, so
Well
can you, like,
well,
maybe
here's the
weather
thing.
it for me?" Like,
Do you think that they don't get new helmets, that he just gets they just repair his existing helmet?
in today's world, at least from an IT standpoint, 9 times out of 10, it's cheaper and more efficient to just get a new one. Like, you know what I mean? It's a lot and that's honestly true for a lot of clothes. Like, you know how much more work it's gonna cost, like, a tailor to find the correct needle, thread, everything you would need to actually match something, not just patch it, right? Because you could patch something, all that's easy. But if you're wanting to make it, like, same materials to a T and make it flush and perfect, that's a lot of labor, that's a lot of hours, it's a lot of depending on the material, it could be hard to even find. So, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
So, I mean, yes and no. I could see it being, "Oh, he just needed the X piece got damaged, so they just put a new one on." But it's like, you'd think he'd give him a new paint job after the fact if that's the case, I don't know.
sure.
But I feel like in the end, Kevin Feige and the actual, like, coming back to the real world, the costume designers would want his helmet to look a little bit rougher and so he didn't because then it gives honestly the interpretation that this quote unquote new Daredevil has been around for a while, right? Like
Mhm.
it's like he's doing stuff. He's got this for one, he's got a different color helmet because now it's yellow, but for two, it's already been scuffed up pretty bad. So he's been using the yellow for quite some time now. So from like a storytelling audience perspective, it kind of subconsciously lets you know that, like, this is a new Daredevil, and he's been around for a while. So I could see that just being the simple answer for it, really.
Mhm.
Other than the fact that it just kinda looks better, like, just kinda scuffed up too, you know? When everything just looks all nice and shiny, it usually doesn't look as good. 9 times out of 10 anyway. I think that was, like, the best look you really got out of it.
Yeah.
Surprised I even paused it in the right time. Let's try to see the last thing I really wanna do with the She-Hulk stuff, honestly, is trying to look and see what shoes we can pick out. That was really the only other thing that stood out to me in any capacity was just, the different shoes that were in Pug's, shoe room or shoe closet. There maybe the costume was for this guy. Look at that gut.
Maybe
Boom.
little cosplayer costume going on.
Mhm. Maybe that's all it was. Did I miss the shoes?
Yeah, yeah, it would have been back at the beginning because they have kind of a default. Yeah, it would have been. They have a default set of stills that they use or images they use at the end of it, right before the text credits. But the first part are always from the episode.
Yeah. Why am I not seeing it? Their scroll feature kinda sucks, like, you don't
Must
get, like, accurate thumbnails, like, as you're skimming through.
must have been a very short time it was up.
You gotta be kidding me. I just went in to just skim through this and find it, and now okay, I got it, I got shoes.
There you
There's the
go.
Iron Man 3s. What do we got? There's the Cyclops, there's Captain Marvel.
There's Spider-Man 2 above Cyclops. Is that
What is this,
Spider-Man? Thing. No, that's
Brainiac?
Thing.
Yeah, that's Thing. Look
Thing.
at this though,
Yeah.
who has 3 dots in Marvel? Why am I not thinking about this? Because all I'm thinking of is Brainiac right now.
Yeah, I don't know.
I see there's probably a better angle here too.
Captain Marvel, Cyclops.
This is probably a little bit better.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, Black Panther,
Yep.
Moon Knight right here. There's a crescent moon right there. I didn't see those before. Who has those 3 goddamn dots? I know those 3 goddamn dots. I can't think of what it was. What is this though too? Is this like Falcon or something? What is that? Oh no. Oh my god, I know who that is. Who is that? If it's who I'm thinking of, that's a pretty deep cut. Because this would be Falcon, I think. This is red and white and then has a wing there. So I imagine those would be Falcon. That's Hulk up there with a big H, I presume, and it's green and purple. Who's over here? Oh, they got more dots over here. Is that Galactus? 3 dots for the Galactus, maybe? Does he
Could
have 3
be.
dots on his head? I can't. I want.
Galactus doesn't know. Galactus has the big horns. The
Yeah, I know he has the horns, but doesn't he on the center of his helmet maybe have it? I can't remember.
mm,
It's been a while since I've seen anything with Galactus in it. Maybe we get
I
him
don't
painted in a
believe
bit
so.
more. Oh, maybe what's this one though? All this is so too. I guess I might as well just say utterly pointless. It's not like because they made a
Oh,
shoe,
sure.
it doesn't mean that like any of these things already exist in the MCU. Like
Oh
these
yeah.
are obviously just like a fun Easter egg. Like I can't imagine Kevin Feige in any way, shape, or form would have okayed this under the impression that they were saying,
These
yes,
exist.
yeah,
Yeah.
they all exist in the MCU if you do this. I'm assuming these all yellow ones are Kitty Pryde though, or not Kitty Pryde, Jubilee.
Jubilee. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what would make sense to me. There's nothing else on there, so I feel like that's just a rendition of her raincoat,
Uh huh.
but in shoe form. Maybe this one might be, can't tell if it's like fire or something, but it might have been Phoenix. There's a light and what maybe that's because this is okay, so this is it, but this is like red and yellow. Is that like this is a different rendition of like one of the Marvels? Red and yellow though? I don't know. This one's gonna bug the shit out of me though, because I know this is like oh no mind. I'm thinking of Baron Mordo in the comics has a black like vest with a white emblem on it that looks a lot like that. But that's not it, I don't because this is like blue and yellow, so it doesn't make any sense for it to be. Granted, I'm colorblind, so it could be whatever. It could be something entirely different than blue and yellow for all I know. The Deadpool ones I thought though were very funnily placed because they're like right here looking right at her.
Yeah.
Which what I was at first I thought it was like really funny because like I thought it was like Jen standing there because of the fourth wall break, and then I was like, well, wait, that wouldn't be Jen, and then like I obviously that's the girl, her friend, who he was actually talking about the shoes to. So then I was like, well, it was funny in my mind when this was Jen, and now it's not as funny, but it's still funny. Yeah. Oh, you
Before we
got
leave,
anything else to add about She-Hulk?
well, just before we leave the Marvel world, I'm just going to show you this real quick. So we had to stop at Walmart yesterday, and I found this.
Hmm.
It was on the clearance rack, so
Oh,
you
a
see
resin bust too?
bucks,
Oh,
and
wait, I
it's
think I saw that at one of my Walmarts too. Have you opened it?
I have not. It might be worth heading back to your Walmart to check out because they're clearing it out. You got your certificate of authenticity for
There's only
mass
1,000?
the mass produced But your certificate of authenticity for the mass-produced um, resin bust. But I thought it was pretty cool. We've talked before on the streams how we both appreciate this character of Cyclops, and for $30, it was I
Very
thought,
underutilized in the films.
yeah, well, yeah, and they had a good actor playing him too. James Marsden is
Yeah.
a good actor, and
I don't know what's the more sad part about that, honestly. The fact that they underutilized Cyclops as a character, or the fact that they had a good actor to play the character and then underutilized the actor.
yeah, yeah, I have no idea, but it's got a nice weight to it. It's got the shading on it. It's not good. My camera's not really good enough to pick it all up, but it's got the shading and stuff on it. If I get out of screen,
It
will
actually does look pretty good. The
so
only
I
your
thought it was cool.
NVIDIA broadcast is blurring him because he doesn't think he's a human. No, but that looks pretty good.
So anyway, if you're a fan of the X-Men, you might be worth a trip to your local Walmart to see if they have this guy on sale. I love the little visor blast action that they included with it. So
That did look good.
they're clearing them out. So go look for them. It looks like, and two, this is from the animated show. On the side, at least, they feature other characters. So I'm not sure if this was an entire line that they did. If there's an entire line of those out there, because if there is, I might just have sent myself down an eBay rabbit hole.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, those are pretty good. That actually looked surprisingly good. Because I
Yeah,
saw that box and I literally thought, I think I literally remember thinking to myself, huh, resin bust, that's funny. Because it's just like a little, like, it's like this big. I was like, that can't be very good if they're selling it at Walmart. Like, but they actually look really good.
I mean, it's Diamond Toys, who does a lot
Diamond
of Diamond,
Select. Yeah.
Diamond Select, so they do a lot of comic book stuff, and yeah, so it's got the shading and stuff. It looks like in the animated style. I'm pleased with. I mean, especially when you find these things on clearance, even
Yeah, I
better.
mean, sure. What was it, $30? Is that what it was?
$30, yeah. Yep.
That's not bad.
Nope.
It's pretty good. I might have to go
Right.
back and see. I don't remember which Walmart I was at because I got like 3 in my general area that I go to.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go look. Now I'll be curious because I did like how the shading was. If they did have more, like, I would
Like,
like a little Wolverine one and a little Gambit one. That'd be
yeah,
cool.
yep, definitely. I'd like
Although,
the Jean Grey to go along with this one. Just put them next to
yeah,
each other.
that'd be a good little set to have at least too, right? Like, I wish they would have made some more. I mean, really, no.
Yeah.
Sideshow's made a couple of their. I don't really care for the sideshow ones. The ones that they made, the 6 scale figures they made of the animated series renditions. Like, they're fine, but I don't there's something about them I don't like when every time I've seen them, I never wanted to I just don't think they looked as good as they could have, like and I think it was honestly just because, like, the material they used for the suits, I felt like looked kinda meh. It
Yeah.
just looked like they were wearing a sock. Like, I think that's what kinda did it for me, but I don't know.
Nice.
Nevertheless, that's a good find, for sure. I'm glad you pulled the trigger on it because, that made me might wanna go back and pull the trigger on it myself. If I can find it again.
Yeah. I did a quick Google here, and they did the whole. It looks like they did the whole line. There's a Rogue. There's a Gambit looks good too. Gambit's got a lit up playing card. Looks pretty good.
Does it actually light up? Is it a light up feature?
No, it's not light up
Oh,
features.
okay.
It's
Just
got
has
the
a kinetic energy
air
around it.
effect. Yeah, just like Cyclops the visor. So
That's cool, though. Now I wanna pull those up, damn it. That's the thing, I've only ever seen the Cyclops, so where
oh,
were
yeah,
those at?
I've taken us down a offshoot, a rabbit hole now too.
I'm
They've
just more
got
confused as to how I never saw anything other than the Cyclops if they made all these figures.
none of these are showing up though as like, well, these are all at like collectible stores or like specialty stores. Like you've got them over at Toy Wiz. There's one, the Rogue one they've got listed on Amazon. It says Storm would be cool. She's got a little lightning effect. That one Storm looks really good.
I wonder if, like they just had, like they had a Magneto
Mhm.
and a Deadpool. What? They had 2 different Deadpools.
Look at that, Magneto's clearance on Walmart's site.
Did you see this? They had 2 Deadpools. Not that I would get 2 Deadpools, but look at this shit. Look at this.
Oh,
They
that's
have
awesome.
they have this one, and they have this one.
Oh, that's cool. I like that one.
And it's funny because this one's more of an actual animated one, and then this
Yep,
one is not. That's funny, and this one actually is categorized as the animated one. These are all pretty
animated.
good price for what they are. Like
Sure.
a Cap one, but this one's not animated. So it looks like Diamond Select just randomly got like a license for all this stuff and started making them because Magneto is $64. The Wolverine one is kind of lackluster.
Yeah, not very well, I don't know. I guess he had that pose.
I feel he just kind of looks kind of flat.
He does look flat.
It kind of works for Deadpool, but it's just I don't know. Maybe it's not enough shading or something. Maybe it's just a texture on his arm or something. I don't know. Gambit looked pretty good though.
Yeah, it came to look good.
I mean, I got the 6 scale Cajun card dealer though. I will say, which is
Yep,
a pretty awesome Gambit figure. Like I love that figure. It's so cool,
that
dude.
is
This
very
is.
cool.
Did you see this? The Phoenix Jean Grey.
I didn't see that one yet.
That looks really good. The
Uh,
Storm one looks really cool too. I don't know why I can't get a bigger picture of this, but like look and the picture's not even getting bigger. Look at that shit.
oh, that
There it
one's
is.
a little pricier, huh? Looks
It's a
very
bit more expensive, but I like that a lot. That looks good.
yeah.
That is really cool.
These are probably something too, if you want, you should probably pick these up because once the Disney once the Disney new, X-Men '97 show comes out, I'm sure
Mhm.
that there's gonna be a bigger demand for these going
W
forward.
which is probably why they released them, in all honesty.
So, yeah,
I'm sure it had because I mean, why else would you randomly make these resin buffs in 2022 off of a 1990s cartoon design? I feel
sure.
like. To be
Yeah,
fair, they did make, DC, but I guess DC is more known for this, though, and their properties were a bit longer lasting into the 2000s. Like, I have a lot of the animated series statues for all of their, Tim, Bruce Timm. No, I was literally was looking at Superman from the animated series, so I went to Tim Daly, who does the voice for
yep.
Superman. So that's why I kinda blanked on Bruce Timm because of that. The unmasked Wolverine is a cool $20 on this eBay, though. This eBay shop
Oh,
here.
nice.
See, I have a
Yeah,
lot of these full just like this, these Diamond Select, animate these are actually good. These are just vinyl statues, but this one's a resin one. The ones I have, I'm 99% sure are just vinyl for the DC animated renditions of all the characters, but they're really good little statues, man. Like, they look really because they're just doing the animated rendition of them, they don't need to be, like, super detailed, so, like, they did enough little shading here and there on them that I think, like, for the price point, they're really totally worth it if you're a fan of, like, the Bruce Timm animated DC stuff because you can still find a lot of those. Like, I have, like, literally this Batman Beyond one right freaking here, and it is just, like, a perfect little like
awesome.
it's great. Like, there's
Oh, yeah.
it's a perfect rendition of what this character looked like in the animated series, like, you can't really go wrong with it, and
Yep.
for it being, like, anywhere from, like, 30 to $60 at most for these things usually, like, really good, they get most of them have, like, a nice little, like, dynamic pose, some of them do, some of them don't, but then you have nice display bases with them half the time. They're not removable or anything, but again, for, like, 30, $60 tops, It's like a 11-inch statue. Like it's pretty good. I've always been pretty happy with those things every time I've come across them, to be honest with you. Nevertheless, I'm about ready to I didn't realize it's already midnight, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Jesus. Let's get into
My bad, I took us off course there.
no worries, dude. We're just talking. We're just doing the thing, man. We're just doing the thing. Let's do this. Lord of the Rings. What were your thoughts? Tell me how you felt about I said this before, not to interrupt. I know I just asked you how you thought, but I will say that with this episode of Rings of Power, I think before we get too far into it, it was probably the strongest of the episodes other than maybe episode 2, and it's ironic because guess who was in both of those episodes predominantly? Elrond. This show is like if they just had the Elrond character in the show more, it would be working, I think, on so many more levels. And the relationship that the Elrond character, at least is how I'm looking at this purely from the show's perspective. Source material completely out the window for this. As a show, I have a lot I have these like separate problems with the show from the aspect of purely it being a show, and then the source material, any differences it might have from the source material, and any knowledge I have of the source material that makes me look at the show and like what it's doing in some kind of weird light. I'm kind of in a unique position to where I can completely detach those because up until the after the first 2 episodes of this series, like, I was kind of lost as to what was going on because and this is more of a fault I fault this on the show more than anything because I was in a position at the time where I did not know anything about the Second Age and the events of the source material in any capacity when this show launched. And I watched the first 2 episodes of this I kind of felt the same way. Like I got no information from what they showed me on screen to make me know what the hell was going on in the world at the time with any of the characters. Like I just didn't know. So sometime between it was either after the second episode or after the third episode. I think it was between the second and third episode because the show had done such a poor job, like in all honesty, of just telling me what the hell was going on, what the characters' motivations were, and just everything that's what a show needs to do. I just started to look into the source materials because I thought maybe I was missing something. Like maybe this is all just right in my face and like I just don't know. I'm not familiar with the source material, so maybe it's my fault. So then I start looking into the source material. So thank you, Nerd of the Rings, for all your videos because I just plowed through a bunch of those. So now I feel like I know everything about the second age, the first age, even the what Tolkien wrote about the third age, because now I know all the things that were different about the movie series, Peter Jackson's films, and the source material, and it's mind blowing how different that was from the source material. So I'm looking at this show from like two perspectives, where like as a show, it really is failing in a lot of ways. Like all the characters are some of the characters, not all the characters. And here's the thing too, to preface this, I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on the show because I actually like and I enjoy watching the show. But there are some things like it's got some terrible pacing issues. It's got very, very, very underdeveloped characters. Some characters are just still 4 hours in unlikable, like in a lot of ways. So there's just like no character development. You don't understand the fundamental like motivations of any characters in a lot of ways. Like some more than others, like for sure. Like I said, Elrond and Durin. Like anytime Elrond and Durin are on screen, the show is singing. The show is fantastic when Elrond and Durin are doing their thing. Like they are great. Those characters since day one have been flushed out just through normal conversation between themselves, the interactions they had with each other, even the interactions that Elrond had with Gilgalad and um, Galadriel when they first meet each other. You knew everything you needed to know about Elrond, and that conversation with Elrond and Galadriel at the it was either the first or second episode, all it did was make Galadriel look more like an asshole because like he was all happy to like see her and like all this stuff, and then she shows up and doesn't want anything to do with him, doesn't give a shit about their friendship, and just says, "So you're gonna get me this meeting with the king?" That's all she cared about. So it's just like all these things. Like, that's pretty much Galadriel's only through line this entire time. Like it's just been annoying, and that's how like a lot of the characters are. But it's just weird because like I said, I'm in this unique position where I can look at it from the aspect of a show, and everything I just kind of said that was negative has nothing to do with any detract. Like, I'm not bringing the source material into any of that. Like, there's a whole other like plethora of things that now that I have, again, to quote myself, the gift of foresight, I have even more kind of issues with the show knowing what is like supposed to happen, quote unquote. But my main issue, John, and I want to know if this is an issue with you, so I'll kick it over to you before I just keep ranting. Um, the main issue I have with this show, and it kind of calls back to what I said that you called out earlier, John, was that the show just inherently has been doing this cliffhanger thing for no reason, right? Like back to episode 1 or 2, whenever it was, with the Mithril. It was like the at the end of the episode, Durin and the King Durin, which that's a whole problem in and of itself. Like the any like just to give you a little just a flex on the Tolkien knowledge I now have, the dwarves only name their kings Durin when like if I'm remembering correctly, and so I did say this a bit with flex, but like I said, I'm not 100% familiar, but there's actually like a canonical issue with the fact that the Durin we were introduced to is named Durin because the king of the dwarves at the time is only supposed to be given the name Durin when they believe that he is like the original Durin reincarnated into him. And that's what earns them the right of being named Durin the Fourth or whatever. But in the show, you have King Durin who would just be Durin the Third, and now he's Durin the Fourth, presumably. So that's its own kind of like canonical mishap. But nevertheless, they do the thing at the end of that episode when the dwarves open the box and the Zelda music plays like da na na na, and then it just they don't show you what's in the box. And everybody like knew, even our first guess, and this was pre me looking into anything and knowing anything at all about the Second Age. I just assumed it was Mithril. Like even
Yeah.
my tame knowledge of the world was like, well, that's either Mithril or it's a Silmaril. But it would make really no sense for it to have been a Silmaril because there's been no documentation that I'm aware of any dwarves in the Second Age have coming, especially Durin having a Silmaril in any way, shape, or form. But the fact that they made it glow when they opened the box in the end of that episode, and then in this episode, when Durin opens the box, it didn't glow. So it's like another thing where it's like you could look into it more and be like, are they doing another cliffhanger thing to say that maybe King Durin in his special box, maybe he did have a Silmaril because it glue? Or did they just do that initial open the box and it glows for suspense, for a cliffhanger for no reason? Because ultimately, when he finally opened the box, it wasn't a fucking surprise. We all knew it was going to be Mithril. So like and then on top of that, the most inherent problem I have with the show is that they seem to be setting everything up in that way to have this big M. Night Shyamalan twist. Like, we still don't know who Sauron is or what Sauron is doing right now. And I think personally that is a huge mistake. Like, I think Sauron should be interpreted more like Thanos. We should be following Sauron on this journey and seeing what he's doing, because then we would understand his motivations. We would see the interesting thing about the source material is not that Sauron tricked everybody. Like we all know that's going to happen. So that's where it comes back into the M. Night Shyamalan thing that they're going for really no reason. We all know it's Sauron. We all know watching this that Sauron is the bad guy. This is leading up to the War of the Ring. We all already know. So I think them hiding Sauron and making everybody sit here and second guess who Sauron is a huge waste of time, and it would be much more interesting, just like it is in the books, to actually see the the exchanges of dialogue that Sauron has. When Sauron takes on the Anatar form and goes and visits the Elvish kingdoms, and he talks to Gilgalad and Elrond and Galadriel, and they're all skeptical of this Anatar figure, and they turn him away. They think he's up to some shit. They didn't like him. Like they were very weary and suspicious of him. So they send him away. And then when he leaves, he goes and he stops by Calibrimbar's place, and he essentially uses the knowledge that he gained from his interactions with Galadriel and Elrond and, Gilgalad, and then changed up his game and was able to convince Calibrimbar to make the goddamn rings. And, like, seeing this stuff play out is what's interesting. Seeing Sauron going and actually being the master manipulator he is, and how he's able to spread his influence, that's the interesting stuff. Like, and it's annoying to me because, like, in the books, and I don't wanna be, like, in the books guy, like, I'm just saying, this is a fundamental the way they're telling the story, because I was already lost while I was watching the show before I knew what was going on, but now that I know what's, like, in the books, it's just annoying from a storytelling perspective because Tolkien didn't write it to be a M. Night Shyamalan twist. Like, and again, we already know it's Sauron. So the fact that, like, they're, like, keeping Sauron in the dark and kinda taking influence, I imagine from the Peter Jackson films, because I don't know if any of you knew this, but Sauron was never a big giant eye on the fucking tower. Like, Sauron very much had a physical form during the events of the Third Age. So, like, that was a pretty heavy adaptation. It worked in the Peter Jackson films because he really didn't do a whole lot of boots on the ground stuff at that point in time, but that's not really the case in the Second Age. So it just really kind of annoys me because because it's fundamentally not really written in that fashion. Like, it's not supposed to be a secret to the reader that Sauron is doing these things. Like, as a reader, we know Sauron's doing this. We're following that stuff. We're understanding it. But in the show, we still don't even know who he is yet. It's like, is it Halbrand? Is it the stranger? Is it there was one other person, I can't remember who it might have been. But nevertheless, that's my biggest problem. It's just the way the way the characters have been perceived is not very good. They haven't done a good job of, like, explaining the plot. It's just a lot of little things like that. But this episode was, I think, the kind of the turning point for the series, and it needed to be, because the last rant I'll have here before I kick it to you, John, is that all of this, on top of the fact that this has been the 4th hour of an 8-hour series. We are halfway through this series at this point. There are 8 episodes. In 4 hours, there is absolutely no excuse for you to not have given the audience a clear understanding of your characters, their motivations, the plot, the narrative, all these things. The original the first movie, Fellowship of the Ring, is 2 hours and 58 minutes long. Most movies are 90 minutes to 120 minutes. So even at the time of the 3rd episode, 3 hours into this series, you had sometimes twice as much time as a 90-minute movie and 2/3 of that time as an hour and 20-minute movie. And there's no excuse for anybody to be lost, uninterested, your characters to not be flushed out in any way, shape, or form. Like, there's just no excuse. Like, in a 90-minute movie, people are able to tell a beginning, middle, and end. You understand character motivations, etc. So, like, that's my biggest problem. Like, John, what do you have before I just keep going on with this? Because I like this episode, but I've been wanting this. I literally thought I said off the top, this is that callback section. Look out for the clip because I'll call back to it right here. I said this was going to happen. I had some words. I've been wanting to make a video about this, and there's stuff I left out for the sake of time because it's already past midnight. But nevertheless, John, what are your thoughts about this episode?
Yeah, see, I'm not as heavily invested in it as you are now. Like you have that all this wealth of extra knowledge. Um, I thought it
Burden
was
of
good.
knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. I thought it was good. Um, they are setting up these kind of just random cliffhangers, um, just for the sake of having them. And the one thing I'll say about the cliffhangers is I don't care. Like cliffhangers only work if you really care, I think.
No,
And and they also don't make a lot of sense to me. Like you said, there seems to be this kind of mystery around who Sauron is, but I don't feel like I know any of the unless Sauron turns out to be the elf that is helping the mother and the child. Again, I apologize. I don't know these characters' names well enough.
Adar. That
Unless
was the third person who could be Sauron that I blanked on. Adar, the
okay,
bad elf that was
Adar.
introduced. Yeah.
Yeah, so unless it's the elf that Adar had captured and let go to deliver the message, or unless it's the elf that's with the dwarves and helping the dwarves out, I don't feel like I know a single other male character in this film. Well, no, that's true. Hold on. We have the ship captain in Numenor,
Yeah,
um,
Elendor.
and, and we have the king, the guy that she thinks is the king that's with her that was on the ship. Those are the other two male characters that are in this show. Unless it turns out to be one of those four, and even if it does turn out to be one of those four, but unless if it doesn't turn out to be one of those four, it's going to be a wholly new character to me. Well, I guess it could be the guy that was in the Meteor that we've had a total of like 50 seconds of screen time that has kind of grunted his way through his scenes and
Mhm.
really I don't give two craps about at this
Yeah.
point. Like that whole aspect of the show is very confusing me. Like I never would have thought in a Lord of the Rings show I would have seen a human fall from space and land. So
Well,
unless
and
there's
be
some sort of
bored by it.
and be bored by it, yeah.
That's the stranger part.
Just
No
be
pun
just be
intended.
confused, yeah, just be confused by it.
Well, see,
So
with
and
the
let
stranger, it's interesting because that obviously didn't happen in the books. The Harfoots aren't in the Second Age. So the predominant theory that I buy into is that, and this is the easiest explanation for people who are only familiar with the movies as well, like 99% of people are, is that that would be Gandalf. Even though Gandalf isn't supposed to be here for another 1,000 years, he doesn't show up in Middle Earth till the Third Age. But the fact that you have the Harfoots in the Second Age as well, who are not supposed to be here, and then you have this guy crash from the sky, making that Gandalf would explain why Gandalf has this affinity towards hobbits later in the Third Age.
sure,
So, like, that's the only thing that actually makes sense for either of those characters to be put together right now. Because if it's not Gandalf, it doesn't make any sense for him to have had to landed by the Harfoots. Why else are you shoehorning in the Harfoots? Because they're not even supposed to be here right now. If you needed someone to fall from the sky, they could have landed to anybody. So it's like, yeah, it should be a blue mage if you're going by the books, but I don't really expect this to do everything by the book. And so just trying to piece things together now that I do know the books, it's like, well, that's really the only person it could be. And it also makes sense for people who aren't familiar with the books for it to be Gandalf. But I
yeah.
don't know. Could be whoever.
And if it's Sauron, like
It makes
that's
less
gonna
sense
make
too.
it makes less sense, but it's also gonna make Sauron this kind of really this guy that like why would Sauron fall from the sky and why would he be this weak bumbling idiot at this point? Like it just and plus we got that shot early on in the series of Sauron in front of his army in his armor and kind of in silhouette. So
looking cool as
I've
shit.
I've always assumed that Sauron was just out there doing his thing. I never thought that we'd actually that one of our characters could possibly I still don't think that any one of our characters could possibly be Sauron, which means that once they introduce Sauron, he's by kind of been kept off the board for no reason at this point. Like it's
Mhm.
just being done for the sake of being done. Maybe there's the thought that he's more ominous as this presence and not actually being involved in the show, but that hasn't quite worked out that way. It hasn't worked out that way for me, at least. Um,
And
so yeah,
that
that
goes to, like, what I was saying was my problem with the show as someone approaching the show initially with no knowledge, and now with that knowledge, Sauron is very active in this time period. Like, he shapeshifts into an elf-like figure and goes and tries to manipulate Galadriel Gilgalad, which is the king of the elves that they were talking to when she got sent to the west initially, and Elrond, and they're all skeptical of him at that time. And then after that situation happens, he goes down to Celebrimbor, who is trying to build that forge. And he's the person who crafts the rings because Sauron convinces him to do so. So the way the show has been set up, why else would he be making a forge other than to make the rings? So that makes me think that Sauron has already visited Celebrimbor and convinced him to build the forge and make these rings. And if that's the case, why was any of this off screen? Like, it's like that's the interesting stuff, in my opinion. Because like you're supposed to see that it's like Thanos. Thanos wasn't just we saw everything he did, and it was interesting because we understood where he was coming from. He's an interesting character. But like they're just completely throwing that out the window, it seems like in this case, because we haven't been introduced to him in any way, shape, or form. And like you said, after the first two episodes, it's like this cliffhanger stuff for the sake of having a cliffhanger. It's like they want us all to think XYZ person is Sauron.
yeah.
Just so we're they're keeping us guessing for no reason. Just so they can have this false M. Night Shyamalan twist when the time comes. But the problem is, like you said, you have to care when a twist happens. Like, when we found out that it was Mithril in the chest, no one fucking cared because it's not a surprise. We knew it. It's like the Agatha song, like it was Agatha like that's what they're doing. Like it's like, oh, they want it to be like it's Sauron all along, and like we fucking know it's Sauron. Why don't you just show us what's happening so we better understand the story? Like, because it's like, yeah, I literally feel like Thanos because like I'm burdened with this knowledge of knowing where it's all going now, or where it's like quote unquote supposed to be going and whatever. And that makes the viewing experience honestly kind of it's not necessarily worse, but it's just like different. And I was talking about this last week. It's a little bit more frustrating, more so than anything, because like before I knew what was supposed to have been going on during this time period in the source material, I was just lost as a viewer because the show had a very bad pace. You didn't really understand the character motivations. You didn't understand where any of these plot lines were going. And I argue you still don't. Like, really. Like, I don't know. Do you think you have a good idea of where the story's going as someone who hasn't read the books and stuff and know anything about it?
No, I have no idea. I don't even know how these characters are ever going to come together and like interact. Like these characters are all kind of we're watching multiple different storylines, and I don't ever see how they're all going to converge. I mean, not that I need to see, but I don't know. I
Well, that's the
don't.
thing. You don't
It's
need to see you don't need to understand everything. But I actually thought about that exact thing earlier. I was literally sitting here and I was ranting in my own head about making this video. Like, with everything they've done from a show standpoint, we have no idea how any of this connects whatsoever. Like, Galadriel is over in Numenor doing whatever the fuck she's doing, like, finally has convinced the Numenorians to join up and help her and whatever, like, that's all fine, but then, like, how is that supposed to connect over to Elrond and Durin? They've only had one interaction. Elrond and Galadriel have one interaction, and Elrond was, like I said, super happy to see his friend after all this time, and she didn't give a fuck. and then she just left.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, so they have no connection in the story right now at all. Like the last like presumably Elrond thinks that she's in the West. Like as the show is presented, he has no idea that she is in Numenor at this point. So they're completely detached from each other. Then the Harfoots, who aren't even supposed to be in the story right now, they are completely detached from everybody because even in the show, they've established that pretty much nobody knows they exist at this point. So then you couple that with the stranger, who, since we have no idea who the hell that even is, how does that really connect to Elrond? Like, where are they going? You know, it's like we haven't even got like a simple indication of like the Harfoots are heading towards X location. And then we know that X location is where the elves are or where the orcs are or anything like that. Like, we have no idea of how any of this is going to connect right now. And it would have been like, I don't know, I feel like they could have done a lot more to make this a little more coherent. Because even as, like I said, I know what the source material is now, and it just adds other layers of frustration more so than helps kind of get a grasp on where the show is going. Like, and with Halbrand, the one interesting thing that happened with Halbrand in this episode, and John, as you not being someone familiar with the books, this guy here, Alfarazon here, he's a pretty important fellow. No spoilers, I don't wanna spoil anything. That's why everything I've mentioned is just stuff that happened in the books, and obviously they're not doing in the show, so bear that in mind. I'm trying not to spoil, like, a ton of stuff that could happen, but Alfarazon here, he's a very, integral person, in the stuff coming, that's for sure. This is obviously Isildur's dad, who is he is the pretty much one of the only likable characters in the show right now too. Elendor here, like that's pretty much it. I like him. He's good. He's been written well. Like you get that's the thing when you learned more about him than in the few scenes that he had. It was in the first episode that he was in when he picked up Galadriel and then had that brief interaction with her on the boat. And then later on, when he was following her through the city, and then they had that exchange where he was telling her that not everyone is 100% anti elf here. Like, you learn so much about him just in those couple of exchanges. Like, he's completely faithful to like his superiors because he was like, he literally says, like, it's not for me to decide. That's for, my betters to decide or whatever. Like, I'm going to take you to my betters or whatever the fuck he said. But then later on, when he's one on one with her again, well, actually, truly one on one with her, he reveals that, like, you know, not everyone here is anti elf, like implying that he is not anti elf. He's what they call in the books one of the faithful. So, and that's a big thing with Numenor here. So, I know that's just it's just more little things that are just kind of frustrating because you have like all this stuff happening, and then Halbrand, I mean Adar here obviously like is like the way the show's been going with the M Night Shyamalan twist angle. There's almost zero possibility that he is Sauron because they want everybody to think he's Sauron, and I hate that they're doing that shit. You're muted right now, I think.
Why would Sauron be playing a why would he be playing a henchman? Like, why would he playing
Exactly.
his own henchman? Like, it doesn't that was the other thing, like, this cat, they kept his face blurred at the end of the last episode, and then when they revealed him this episode, it was kinda like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm not sure why you kept his face blurred like last time, like,
Well,
you coulda just showed
they needed a cliffhanger
yeah, but the
for the
like,
sake of it.
there was no payoff to it. It was just
No.
like, "Oh, here's some random guy, okay."
Just like the Mithril on the box. Didn't
Yeah.
matter. And it's
Mithril
like,
was worse in a way because, you knew what it was. I don't know, it was just I
yeah,
don't know.
exactly. That's why I think like you had the gift of foresight without even knowing it at the time, because you literally said in like the first after show we did for Lord of the Rings, like you felt like they were having cliffhangers for the sake of having cliffhangers or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's totally true. Adar being blurred, the mithril in the box, all these storylines that just the stranger at the end of the episode the first time. And then when you see him again, guess what? You learn nothing more. So what was the
Yeah.
point of the cliffhanger? Because they're not executing the narrative in any capacity. They're not furthering any narrative or plot or characters. Like 9 times out of 10. Some they do, but others it's like the fact that like yeah, sure, Elendor has been portrayed great in my opinion. The what is his name? The elf guy you were talking about, the Legolas kind of guy, like Blegolas. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The black elf, like, he's
Yeah.
literally like the Legolas of the show. I can't his name starts with an A, and I can't remember. He seems like a cool character. They haven't done anything to flush him out, though. Like, all we've really seen him do is be a little bit stoic and then feel a little bit of empathy for that human who he obviously is into, the human girl, and
Yeah.
then that's all we've seen him do, so it's like, I don't really understand him and what, like, his motivations are still. Like, I get that he's a good guy, like, he didn't wanna cut the tree down, like, things like but, like, they're not really I don't know any more about him. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's most of the characters are kinda like that or far worse, like Galadriel, where it's like she's just borderline unlikable throughout the whole series so far. She's just like crass, makes random ass, like stupid decisions, like just terrible people skills. And it's like, obviously, it's not how she's gonna wind up in the end, sure, but like, you gotta make them interesting. You gotta make people care. Cause like, I just, like you said, it's like they're doing some of these reveals, even, and it's like, you just don't care. Like, it's like, we knew it was Mithril. What was the point of blur? You know what's worse about them blurring out Adar's face at the end of the episode 3? They titled the episode Adar.
Yeah.
So it's like you're gonna name the episode Adar and then not even introduce us to the character of Adar?
Mhm.
So again, setup and cliffhanger for the sake of having a setup and cliffhanger, and then in
Mhm.
the end, there's no real payoff. Even the Mithril thing was 2 episodes later. So it's like you see the box, and then a whole episode goes by, and then you finally find out what's in the box, but, oh, you already knew it was in the box the whole goddamn time. That's why it's just stupid. Now, the only thing I will add, because I don't really know if I have too much else to add other than, like, I'm not 100% sure on what's going on with the dude in the sword, honestly. Like, obviously, it seems like it's like the broken hilt of a ring wraith's sword, like one of the an original ring wraith or something, I would imagine. But the jury's still kind of out, but I would explain why the orcs are actually looking for it in some capacity. No idea though. They could really
I
go
actually
anywhere with that.
I have a question on that because I was watching this on my phone trying to make sure I got the episode in. Did the sword did it start to materialize from the hilt at one point when the orc tried to grab him? Did the rest of the sword start to materialize from the hilt?
It's been the way they've showed it and how it happens in the show so far is that the dude, the kid, is stabs the end of the hilt into his arm to draw his own blood, and then it materializes.
Okay.
So the kid has to draw his own blood from the hilt, like from the pommel of the sword. He
Yeah.
stabs it into there, and then like his blood rematerializes it some capacity.
Okay.
I don't know why. Like if that's a thing in the books, I'm not sure. I'm assuming, like I said, it would make sense if it is like if maybe he has royal blood in him and it's a ring wraith, but that doesn't make any sense because I mean Sauron's ring wraiths were from the nine rings of power. So I don't know. I'm assuming it's something to do with that, but I really just don't know. That is one thing I'm not sure of. The thing with Halbrand, I will say, this character here, up until this scene, I was pretty much would have just put all my money on the fact that he was the Witch King. because we found out he was supposedly of like a royal lineage, supposedly the rightful like king to the Southlands. And if you're familiar at all with the source material, the Nazgul, the ring race, whatever you want to call them, we know that they were all the men that were given the nine rings of power who over time they drained them and they became Sauron's ring race. That's what happened. They became instruments of Sauron. So it would make sense that we find out, oh, he's of royal lineage in some capacity. So, and he's a human. So he's probably going to be, given one of the nine rings and then becomes a Nazgul. So since he's the only one we've been introduced to at this point for whatever reason, it would stand to reason that he would be the Witch King, the most important and, known ring wraith. So, but in this scene, he does some whispering that was a very Sauron influencing, manipulating people kind of thing. So I could totally see them because they're trying to do this is a kind of thing that plays against it too, but because they're doing the M. Night Shyamalan twist thing, everyone kind of assumed he was Sauron, like at first, like he was at least a possibility to be Sauron, right? But then they kind of laid things out that at least for like people familiar with the source material after episode 3 would have been really heavily leaning towards being a Nazgul in some capacity. But then after seeing him and do like this kind of like it was really just this one little scene here where he's just doing he was like kind of manipulating people here. He was whispering in Altherazon's ear a little bit, like, and that was a very Sauron thing. So I still think he's the Witch King, but I could totally see them instead of doing Sauron shape shifting into an elf like figure to go and try to manipulate the elves. Maybe, like I said before, he's already done that to Celebrimbor, but never took the Anatar form and met Gilgalad, Elrond, and Galadriel. And in this story, he just went to Celebrimbor, convinced him to make the forge, and then went to Numenor because instead of how it happens in the books, just for you, this isn't a spoiler. I don't think they're going to do it. But in the books, essentially what happens is like Sauron over time eventually declares himself to be just like the fucking king, the ruler of men, whatever. Like he's the shit. And he just openly declares it and hangs out in Mordor and essentially says, "Bring it on, bitches." But then the Numenorians, they're like, "Nah, fuck that." And they get everybody in there. They get the biggest force they possibly can, and they sail over across the sea. They go to Mordor, and there are just too many of them. So Sauron surrenders. And then there's this whole thing where he goes to Numenor and he manipulates everybody there, turns them against the elves, like all these things, right? I don't think they're going to do that. And I honestly think that, like, because of what we saw here, kind of leans more into the fact that maybe they're accelerating that plot line very quickly and having it be him, because you could argue that he is kind of filling that role here because he goes to Numenor willingly this time, right? So maybe Sauron, instead of openly declaring himself king, being attacked by the Numenorians, surrenders, then wins from the inside out. Maybe he just decides to go there intentionally and manipulate them to turn against the elves, much like Halbrand was kind of insinuating here. So I initially thought Witch King. Now I'm thinking maybe Sauron again for Halbrand, because what he's doing there, I think it makes sense in the lore for them to skip over a little bit because they said they were going to accelerate some of these like the years and the storyline here. And I think it honestly makes the most sense narratively for them to cut out the shit that I just mentioned if they went this route with it, because it would actually work. Like it actually makes sense on paper. I know you're just kinda like, "Yeah, sure, yeah, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but yep, 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 you're confident, totally believe it. Yep, yep, yep."
No, I still don't understand. I mean, that's all fine. I just don't understand.
They're still not executing it all well.
This is not. Uh, this is not a murder mystery. This isn't a whodunit. This isn't a. I don't. I don't look for big reveal or twist. I'm trying to think of Game of Thrones. Did they have a big? I mean, I guess
They
Daenerys going
don't,
bad was the giant twist on that, but that was everybody hated that because like it was came out of left field and nobody like that was a terrible move on their part. But I can't think of a big like twist like, oh my God, this person was really this person all along. That Game of Thrones did. Like there's certain stories and things where twists work, and I'm not sure that high fantasy is really one where you look for that sort of thing,
well, to your point here, it's not even that. The problem is, I feel like the show is taking a lot of assumptions because if I'm right with that last bit, they are making very large assumptions that anybody knows anything about this stuff because 99% of people do not know. Like, this is all new to most people. They know who Elrond is from the movies, they know who Galadriel is from the movies. None of this is 1,000 years before that shit. This has nothing to do with that stuff. So, like, and this is why, like I said, the show was doing a really bad job after the first 2 episodes to clue me in on what the fuck was going on, because be literally because I didn't like, I watched them and I was like, I don't know if I'm just missing something here, so I'm gonna look more into the Second Age stuff." Come to find out, it didn't help me to figure all that stuff out, like, to learn about the source material because it's none of it lines up yet. Like, literally, pretty much none of it really lines up. It's all different. And there are things that based on things that have happened in the show, if you know the source material, we should have seen other things happen too. Or you could assume other events would have already happened, or maybe some events haven't happened yet. Whatever it may be. Like, this is obviously not a direct adaptation, and I don't really expect it to be, but from a just a fundamental, like, show, like, storytelling level, there I wholeheartedly do not believe they are doing a good job at, like, cluing people in on anything. Because if I wasn't familiar with the source material, I wouldn't be able to lay all those theories out and make it work in my mind. I'm able to say, like, think in my head how they could make this work with what's been on screen. But, like, I still have to reach, and the fact that they're doing the M. Night Shyamalan twist shit doesn't help, and I think it's a bad move for them to be doing it that way to begin with, and, like, after 4 hours, nobody should be lost, nobody should be confused about any of the characters and what they're needing to do, what their motivations are. After the first episode of House of the Dragon, they introduce you to every single character. You know exactly what they're going to do for the rest of the season, pretty much. You don't have to know anything about the books. And you fundamentally know everything that those characters are going to do. Not to sit here and compare one show to the other by any means at all. Like, I mean, I have a video that says stop comparing the two. But that video was more or less about comparing the two as fantasy stories, right? As shows, it's perfectly appropriate to compare them. Like, as if you're keeping the source material completely removed and you just want to say, like, well, this show's doing a lot better job of explaining what the characters are doing. Like, I'm able to follow this show more than I'm able to follow that show, especially if you're completely detached from the source material. I think that's a perfectly apt per comparison at that point. You can compare. It's funny, John, I just talked to somebody, not talked to him, but I responded to a comment on one of the I think it was the Stop Comparing, the 2 shows video, and I think it's funny because Like, obviously, the easy comparison to go to is House of the Dragon versus Lord of the Rings because they're both fantasy shows and they're
Sure,
both playing right now. But
sure.
in all actuality, House of the Dragon has more in common with Succession, the show Succession on HBO. Both of the shows are about succession. And you could this is something that kind of lends itself to being like good storytelling despite the setting. Because I always say that like Game of Thrones is essentially like a political drama or a political thriller set in a fantasy world. So you have these fantasy elements, you have a fantasy setting, but the core part of the Game of Thrones story is this political drama and interpersonal character dynamics, and that's it. The show really focuses on characters and then the political stuff and the machinations within. And you could literally take the Game of Thrones, the House of the Dragon story, and you could just drop it into modern day, like the show Succession, and it works. You could put Succession and just yank all those characters and throw them into the House of the Dragon. It works. Like, yeah, you have to change some things. They're not working at a fucking multi-million-dollar modern company, but the basic premise of the show and what it's actually about, the succession, works in any medium. This show, Rings of Power, it doesn't work in any medium right now, really, on its own. There's not enough information. The plot hasn't been executed very well. The characters haven't been fully fleshed out. You could not pull any characters out of this show and put them in another show and say it would work because we don't even know what the real narrative is yet still. And I think the most egregious thing here is that after 4 hours of my life, we still don't know what's going on, and I don't really care about all the characters, right? Like I said, like most movies are 90 minutes long and they do everything that this show has had more than enough time to do. And they tell their full beginning, middle, and end in half the time of the first 3 episodes if you're going at 90 minutes. And like
Uh-huh.
I said, Peter Jackson was able to do it with Fellowship of the Ring, so that's probably the most accurate comparison you could have, right? You compare the first 3 episodes of this show versus Fellowship of the Ring. They both had the same job to do in 3 hours or less. They had to introduce you to the world of Tolkien and Middle-earth. They had to introduce you to all the races and the characters and what their motivations are, tell you what the overall narrative, what the arc was for the whole all 3 movies, let alone just the first movie that you're watching. Show you the inner character dynamics, all this stuff. They had to do all that, and since this was a movie, they had to tell a complete beginning, middle, and end. And Peter Jackson was able to do that. You understood everything you need to know about the world of Tolkien just by watch at least Peter Jackson's interpretation of Tolkien, just by watching Fellowship of the Ring. You weren't lost. You understood everything. You knew what was going on. So the first and that movie was only 2 hours and 58 minutes long. The first 3 episodes of this, longer than that, and it didn't accomplish any of that. Like, just period. It just didn't. All that said, though, I like the show and it has so much fucking potential. I'm just kind of baffled. Like, because I'm like, when I didn't know anything, I thought I was just stupid and didn't know the source material and I was lost. So then I research all this stuff and I do my own homework and now I know everything about it and from a lore perspective. And now I just have this whole other sense of aggravation because it's like, well, it wasn't me. It's just like they're just not telling the story properly, and not based on the source material, just as a show. Like there's no excuse for you to be like as lost as you are. Like it's just crazy. But I
Yeah.
don't know. You got it's getting late. You got anything else you want to add though? What's popping off in your mind? Because I could
I
rant about this for a while. Because as you said, I'm a
see.
bit more invested now.
Yeah. So I mean, this is so. I'm trying to think. I would like to tell what I liked about the show. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it was this is the way they structured the story. If it was, I think it had a lot to do with Durin and who's this elf? What's this elf's name?
Elrond.
Elrond. Doran and Elrond, I like those two. For whatever reason, the actors, I don't know if they're more charismatic.
They're
I don't know if
great.
they're just being written better, but I've liked their story so far. They even had that cool scene where Elrond pieced together what was going on at Durin's house and said to his wife, hey, well, he's not here because this is going on. Then she has the explanation to try and cover for him.
To
Go
that
ahead. You
point,
look
it
like
was
you're.
really cool to see the show's interpretation and actually see it, because you didn't even see this in the Peter Jackson stuff. When Elrond used the elf sight, like when it showed him, I don't know if you saw, because you said you were watching on your phone, right? So it might have been harder for you to see, but they had this really cool shot of Elrond using his elf sight. And like, I wish they had more stuff like that, because the movies didn't have a lot of that stuff.
When he was watching him and his wife.
Yeah, on the bridge, and it was, like, super zoomed in, and then
Yeah,
it showed it, the camera pulled back, and you saw, like, Elrond was sitting there, and he watched it, he, like, was able to read their lips and just pick up what was going on, like, he used the elf sight that you heard Aragorn refer to in Lord of the Rings when he said, like, numerous times, like, "Legolas, what do your elf eyes see?" Like,
yeah,
and you got to see it, so I thought that was really cool. I want more of that shit, and I want more character dynamics like Elrond and Durin. Like I said off the top, when they're on screen, the show is fucking singing, dude. It's great. Like,
yeah.
I love watching them.
S- So I really enjoyed them. I was a little confused as to why, like, I was confused as to why Adar just let the dude go. Like he said, I want you to send a message. Like you couldn't get a message any other way. Like you let the hero of the story. That felt very contrived for him to let the one hero, the elf, go. Like he had how many other slaves were in that camp that were probably not as anyway, that was a little confusing. This guy literally just led a rebellion and like almost escaped on his own, and you're just gonna let him go to deliver a message. Like that felt a little contrived for them to take that jump. But there's always it seems like while I like aspects of the episodes and shows, and this one, like you said, maybe next to the second one, or maybe even more than the second one, I liked it. There's always something that pulls me out of it, and this one, it was just a production thing, it was a choice they made with the camera. There's the scene where the kid is hiding in the well, and I don't know why, but for whatever reason, the 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 orc drops the bucket and the water down into the well, and the water falls into the well, and it splashes on the camera. You get a splash onto the camera of the water, and it was weird.
Pulled you out.
It pulled me out completely. It would be like if somebody got cut and the blood splattered onto the camera. Like it was almost like they were trying to immerse the camera into the scene or something. It just didn't work. Like it should have like why did they try that there? Why did they try and make it that much more immersive by having water drop? Like why didn't it just cut? Why didn't it just cut when the water fell into the well? Why didn't they cut to the next scene?
You know
They
what I
had to
thought
go the
was
extra.
worse? What was
Go
worse with that scene? Just because 'cause you're talking about the well, I didn't even think about it. As soon as that happened after the fact and the orc went back up to the well and he was underwater, and then the orc walks away, he comes up just like it just makes a shit ton of noise. It's like it's
And the orc doesn't hear that
yeah,
part,
I'm like,
yeah.
dude, like, come on, like that's nitpicky shit. But like to your point, the water splashing on the camera pulled you out of it. That pulled me out of it because it's fucking unrealistic. Like
Yeah,
there's no way this kid fearing for his life would have fucking. He was down there for like 2 seconds. It was a
yeah.
2 second thing. He wasn't out of breath yet. Like, get your shit together, kid. Like, I hated that scene. Nevertheless,
Yeah,
I don't know
so,
what's going on with that kid though.
yeah, I mean, that's weird. He met the guy who he stole the sword from now, so I
I
don't know,
will
it's
say it did look like the little friend that he had with him when they were going to do that. This guy, he looked a little bit worse for wears. Um Like, he looked like Frodo after Frodo got stabbed by the sword. And if I remember correctly, he got cut by I think this is why I was thinking it was like a Nazgul sword maybe, because like, there was a shot it's kinda hard to see in this, but I don't feel like skimming through here because it's I don't know why it's not cooperating very well. But, like, he looked very veiny, and he didn't look all that healthy, which is exactly what Frodo looked like when he got stabbed by a ringwraith sword in the Fellowship of the Ring. So I don't know if maybe that's the angle they're trying to go, or it's just like he's just dirty and they made it look like that for some reason. I don't know. Could go back to the whole cliffhanger for being a cliffhanger if you want it to be.
And you talk about pulling you out of an episode, that was the other thing that pulled me out too, was the orcs are chasing the kid and the elf through the forest. The mom comes, they run out into the field, and the sun comes up.
Yeah.
The orcs come to the edge of the forest and don't follow them because the sun's up. Well and good. I love perfect. Makes sense, works well. Problem is, they have the elves step forward into the tree line where the sunlight is beating down directly on parts of their body and their not just clothed parts of their body, but actually skin exposed parts of their body,
Yeah.
which then is like, why the F don't they just run out there? Because they're not being affected right now. I understand they're in the tree line and but you have sunlight hitting them directly
Yep.
and they're fine. Like,
Yep.
if you're going to go to the trouble of doing that, do it right. Have them stay completely in or otherwise have them react to the
A little
sunlight
bit
that's
more at
actually
least,
hitting them.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
they had, like, some of them standing there, and you saw smoke coming off some of them, but they weren't really reacting to it, so I really think that they shot that scene and didn't accommodate for the sunlight that was actually hitting the orcs at the time. So their answer to that was just putting some smoke on some of them,
Well,
but
then
not
that may be a case too of me watching on my phone, and you're not going to pick up that because I didn't know there was smoke coming off of them.
it wasn't all of them. There because no, I thought the same thing when you like, it wasn't just you, because I sat there and it pulled me out more because I saw there was, like, one of them who had smoke coming off of him, but then this other person who was in just as much, if not more sunlight is not reacting to it in any way, shape, or form. He's just standing there and no smoke's coming off of him, but you see the sunlight hitting him. Like, so I no, that was another thing that like I don't it wasn't as well executed as it could or should have been, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I know it seems like this was just a big shit fest, but like I really, really, really want this show to be good. So I'm not just I don't want to just shit on it. I'm just talking about like I said off the top, this is another callback. I said this will pretty much be this will turn into an everything wrong with Rings of Power video. It pretty much did, but there's a lot of things like I love the I said that's why I prefaced this off the top. Anything with Elrond and Durin is fucking great. Like good. Anything with Elindor, good. Really like him. I don't know about anything else yet. The rest of it is just so wishy washy. They're not explaining enough stuff, leaving cliffhangers for the sake of cliffhangers. You don't understand their like a lot of these character motivations. I could get into way more stuff and like really nitpick the shit if I wanted to, but I'm just like the one thing I want to really make clear is that like my gripes are actually just based on what the show has presented far more so than having any influence from like the gift of foresight. Like books removed, like we talked about with Constantine off the top here. I'm good. Like I love the Constantine movie. It has nothing to do with those Constantine source material at all. But I still love that movie. They did a really good job making that movie. So I'm fine if you want to change a lot of shit. I'm not just like mad or upset with because it's not like it was in the books. Like, it has nothing to do with that. Because of all the changes and like differences that have actually been executed in the show, like the direct like XYZ hasn't happened in the books or shouldn't have happened, or this is a change. None of that has even bothered me. Like as you've noticed, I haven't even brought anything up that's an actual change that is a bad thing. Don't care. Everything's been fine from that like regard. It's just the way everything's being executed fundamentally has not been very good. but nevertheless, I want it to be good. Like,
Yeah.
I desperately want it to be good.
I mean, I'll give it this. Like, there was after that first and second episode, there was part of me that was like, I don't know if I even really kind of want to finish watching this, and I'm curious because it has gotten better incrementally as it's gone along. I'm hoping that by the end of the series, or the end of this first season, I'm more invested in it and, looking forward to the return of it. But we'll see.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at with it, in all honesty. Like, again, would I like them to be doing things a little closer to the source material in some capacity? Yeah, but mainly just with the Sauron stuff because I really think it's like they could turn this all around too. Like, and I honestly hate this because I feel like this is going to end with the Sauron reveal, and then maybe throughout the second season we'll be with Sauron more and actually understand what he's doing. And all that's fine. Like if they want to do that, it's fine. I just really don't think it's what the way they're doing it, at least. Like, it could work if it was done better. I mean, I guess that's a fair thing to say. But the way the everything has been, like, just put on screen, I haven't really enjoyed it. Like, I feel like they could have done things a little bit differently with Sauron and made him less of a mysterious thing and lean into the fact that, like, make him Thanos. Like, make us like we should just be following what he's doing. It's much more compelling to like understand the enemy and understand their motivations and then empathize with them if possible. Like you can't really empathize. It's kind of the hard thing with like Lord of the Rings and like this story is that like it's very much black and white for the most part. Like, there's very little shades of gray. We're kind of seeing that potentially with Adar if they're gonna touch on the fact that he was a fallen elf, as they say. But, like, because you had, like, in the books, like, there's this Feanor character who led, like, an elven genocide, so, like, if they're gonna say that, like, maybe Adar was an elf that followed Feanor or something, okay, like, you can do all that, but, like, again, I think it would be better if they were explaining these things as opposed to just cliffhangers for the sake of cliffhangers and just really stretching this shit out for what I believe. It just seems like there's really no reason for it, in all honesty. Nevertheless, I'm going to end the rant there. It's 1 o'clock. You got anything you want to add?
No, I gotta. Yeah, I gotta. My contacts have been killing me for like the last hour. I made a mistake of not rinsing them off today, and they're all dried out. And
Why I wear
yeah,
glasses. I just don't want to deal with them. Like I've
yeah,
never got contacts just because I don't want to deal with it.
that's smart. I sometimes I go with the glasses for today. I just threw these
Yeah.
in, and
All right.
I'm paying
Yeah,
for it now.
that's what happens. Either that or you can't see, so one of
Yeah.
the two. Nevertheless, well, we'll call it here then, John. Let everybody know where they can find you online.
Over at the Twitter is Nightwing_J.
All right, you can find me simply here at Sir Rob Bifo and streaming every was it probably Friday? You I don't know. We were doing Fridays, probably do Saturdays. I don't know, but we'll be
Saturdays
back.
seem to be working a little better lately. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll say we're streaming every Saturday and Sundays, maybe. Well, definitely Sundays, as long as House of the Dragon is on. We'll be doing the House of the Dragon after shows because I'll tell you what, if you thought this was a bit of a Debbie Downer, it hasn't been a Debbie Downer for the Lord of the Ring or the House of the Dragon after show, rather. So that's like a nice day of just like peace and happiness and enjoyment of good television, in my opinion, because I think they've just been killing it with House of Dragon. Everything that happens there, I love that show. It's so good. They've been doing such a good job. I was trepidatious because of the events of the final seasons of Game of Thrones, and as someone who is familiar with that source material, I was worrisome. So, but anyway, every Sunday 10:30ish after the episode ends on HBO Max. We'll be here again doing an after show for that. Otherwise, all the clips will go up whenever, like throughout the week. If you're not here to make it for the shows, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and then we'll see you here tomorrow for the House of the Dragon after show if you're here or not. But also, it's like I said, do the liking and do the subscribing and do all that fun stuff, and then we'll see you in the next video at some point here and there.